Welcome back to Season 5 of the True Blue Conversations podcast with your host, Adam Bloom. G'day, podcasters. Before we get underway with True Blue Conversations, just wanted to give a huge shout out to our friend and sponsor, the Warrior U podcast, hosted by Bram Connolly. Bram is a former Special Forces commander, best-selling author, popular podcast host, and human optimization pioneer. He has an authentic style and the unique ability to not only motivate, but also take people on a journey of self-discovery. Through the Warrior U podcast, Bram interviews guests in a bid to explore all things human optimization, resilience, leadership, and coffee. His book, The Commando Way, a Special Forces Commander's Lessons for Life, Leadership and Success, is available now on amazon.com.au. So from Adam Bloom and all of us here at True Blue Conversations, a big shout out to the Warrior U podcast, Bram Connolly, and his new book, The Commando Way, out now.
G'day, welcome back to True Blue Conversations. I'm Adam Bloom. Today, I'm joined by a Army veteran and a current Queensland firefighter, Luke Smith. And Luke has joined us today to talk about his career in the ADF and also his career in Queensland Fire and Rescue. Hi, Luke. Thanks for joining us on the show, mate.
Hey, Adam. How are you, mate? Thanks for having us here, mate. It's good to get on and have a chat.
Nah, mate, it's an absolute honour and a privilege to have you on, Luke. So, Luke, before we get into your military and your being a first responder as a firefighter, let's go back to a young Luke Smith. And can you tell us what you were like growing up? What was school like? Do you have any brothers and sisters? And did you have any hobbies? And did you play any sport?
Yeah, mate. So I was born in '84. Was born down in Sydney. Spent, I think, the next 6 years in Sydney. I think I might have started school down there. Then my mum and dad separated when I was quite young. So I moved down to Canberra with my mum and started schooling down there. I don't remember a great deal of it. Pretty much did, yeah. I think all of my primary schooling down in Canberra. And my dad's family lived out in Burke in New South Wales with a fairly large sheep and cattle station there. So if I wasn't in Canberra, I was out in Burke, and so yeah, mate, getting into the hobbies, which I still follow through today. So I was mad into pig hunting, mate, mad into shooting, anything outdoors, motorbikes, driving cars. Adventure, mate, if it was outside, it was what I wanted to do. I was never one to sit on a computer game or that. I was always outside doing something. Played a lot of rugby as a kid as well. My mum's dad was a mad rugby head, so was dragged into rugby from a pretty young age, and cricket as well. So growing up in my year, you only got to do one sport per season. You either played footy or soccer, and then you either played cricket or I don't know what else there was, mate, because there's no other sport other than cricket to play in summertime. So yeah, mate, I did there. Played a lot of cricket, a lot of rugby union, which is gentleman's game played by thugs, and still I reckon the best game there is. Australia's not quite as good as we ever used to be in the rugby, but
I have to agree with you, mate. I actually played it at high school as well, so yeah, bit of a rugby fan too, mate. So yeah, I'll agree with that statement. So and also cricket, mate, great game. So
bloody hell, mate, it's two things. Whether it's an AFL ball, a league ball, or a union ball, or it's a cricket bat and ball, it's something that can just get some. You can take that out anywhere in Australia, pull one of those balls out, and start kicking around, and start a conversation and meeting people. Look, it's great.
It sort of is, and it's sort of. Mate, in a sense, it's sort of like anyone can join in. Anybody, like it doesn't matter if you're no good at batting or bowling. By the end of it, mate, you like people. You see them come, they're shy, and they come out, and nothing better than street cricket, mate. Nothing better. That's the good old days. And unfortunately, today the kids, mate, wouldn't know what that is because there's as you say, computers and games, and yeah, get out in the fresh air, mate. Like we did, mate. I was born a few years after you, mate, and same thing, like, dirt jumps and, building cubby houses and all that sort of fun stuff, mate, playing in the bush and coming home when the street lights were, you were out, gone in the morning and come home when it was dark, when the street lights were on.
That's right, mate, 100%. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so that was up to about 96 or 97, I think it was. We spent down in Canberra. And then we made a move from Canberra up to Queensland to Brisbane, where I did all my high schooling in Brisbane on the south side in Mount Gravatt. And again, mate, continue on playing rugby, bit of league training there as well. Like rugby union wasn't as big in Queensland as it was in New South Wales, and so still played there for a club, and then played league for school, and still playing cricket as well. We got pretty heavily involved with the Army Cadets, high school based Army Cadets there, which is what sort of started which is what got my interest going in the military. And yeah, mate, brothers and sisters. I got a brother. I got a younger brother and a younger sister, both half brother and half sister. But yeah, mate, it's that's sort of my childhood in a nutshell.
So for you, Luke, did you have like you sort of had the a draw to the cadets and the army cadets, and did you have any family members that had served before you and sort of led you down that path, or was it just something that you were always interested in?
Yeah, so my grandmother's father, he served in Kokoda during World War Two. Didn't really know an awful lot about him. I've only sort of found out a bit more about him the older I've gotten, and that's only through me sort of asking a few questions and pushing that. But that's on my dad's side of the family. I'm not too sure if anyone else on that side of the family served, but on mum's side, yeah, my grandfather, he was in the Air Force. I think he was a radio technician with the RAF, and he was up in Bougainville and Malaya. Spent a fair bit of time up there. And then my uncle was a submariner, so no direct connections to the army, but yeah, had a couple of family serving in the forces, which always got me pretty interested in it.
So you joined in 2002, and you was that from a direct lead on from when 9/11 happened in 2001, or was that sort of a bit of a driving factor for you, or was there something more?
No, the wheel was already in motion for me joining the military. Yeah, I think I started Army Cadets back in '98 or '99 or something. And Timor kicked off then, and that really sort of sparked my interest, like watching what they're getting up to over there on the news. And the old Australian New Zealand Defender magazine was out then, and being an Army Cadet, reading those magazines was pretty interesting, and that really sort of got me interested in wanting to join the military and learning different roles and stuff. So as soon as I hit 16 and 9 months, I applied for the military, for the army straight away. So I think off the top of my head, I think 9/11 might have happened maybe while I was in that recruitment process. But it still never really registered with me at that time. Like I was still only 16. Had no idea how much that would shape the next 10 years, 11 years of my life, and how involved, that would become in my life. The greater global war on terror. So I couldn't say that it shaped me. It didn't. Like, it was just, I was more interested in what the Australian military was doing. Like, I was fascinated with Armoured Corps, with infantry, with special forces. I just wanted to know more. I just wanted to get there and as quick as I could.
I think, mate, you like when you go back to that day, as you say, you were, 16 that day, and you remember it, and I remember it, mate. I was 8, and everyone knows where they were that day. It changed the world, mate. And as you say, mate, you didn't know that would shape your life for the next, 10, 11 years that you're in the military, and like I don't think a lot of people, mate, a lot of the veterans I've spoken to, which some of them, I don't think they knew that it'd be, it'd be Australia's longest war. When that happened, they didn't expect it.
No, that's right. And yeah, I remember waking up in the morning, getting ready for school, and coming out, and like everyone says, mate, they see it on the TV and they think it's a movie, and
Yep.
And then sort of realizing, oh, hang on a sec, no, this ain't a movie, and they're going, oh, someone's in for a whole lot of butt hurt. Like, it's to take on America like that, you're in for a whole lot of butt hurt. And I thought it'd be, probably naively back then, thinking it'd probably be over pretty quickly.
Mm.
America would just go in there and decimate them. But here we are. What's that? 30 years longer later, and it's only just wrapped up, really.
Yeah, 20, yeah, as everyone pulled out, mate, 2021, and yeah, so 20 odd years now, looking 22 years later, it's surreal, mate, going, yeah, looking back now that, as you say, mate, yeah, that day changed the world, mate. There's certain days in history that, as you remember, mate, growing up, you would have known about, uh, mate, yeah, well, September 11, Bali bombings,
Yeah, Bali bombings,
yeah,
Princess Diana.
yeah, Princess Diana, the tsunami of 2004, like
Yeah,
all those, mate, all those, and the change of prime ministers that we've had that change their undies every day of the week, mate. Over the
that's right. I
yeah,
can't
so,
keep up.
yeah, that's right, exactly, mate. Is so, and the change, mate. And for you, what do you remember of? So you finally get in, so you're in the army, and what do you remember of Kapuka? And was it a shock to the system, or were you sort of going in knowing what to expect?
No, mate, it was a shock to the system. I think for any 17-year-old, it's a shock to the system. Had a bit of an adventure to get there. So, my parents, or mum and my stepdad had bought. We were living in Brisbane, and they'd bought some property down in Mudgee, or just a place outside of Mudgee called Gulgong.
Yep, I know that. I know Gargong, mate.
Yeah, they'd bought a property down there, and so we'd gone down as in must have been the start of the Christmas holidays. And got a letter. This is back, this is well before the internet was there, but you never used it. It was still you got your letter in the mail. But they needed me back in. Brisbane on a certain date, and it was in the new year. So I ended up getting a bus getting this bus from Gulgong down to Sydney, a train, or down to Mudgee, and a train there to back into Sydney, and then a plane back up to Brisbane to be there for my enlistment date and these final testings that I had to do. And yeah, mate, 22nd of January 2002 was on the bus from Brisbane down to Kapuka, mate. Yeah, as any 17-year-old, mate, look, it's a big shock to your system. You're a kid, you're an absolute kid still, and you're mixing it with Ben, and yeah, mate, it probably took me a good, like, because that was when the Kapuka was only 6 weeks.
Yep.
And thank Christ it was only 6 weeks. Like that's just an absolute shithole down there. And I know some people reckon they enjoy it, but yeah, mate, I didn't think much of it. Probably a couple of times there I thought about pulling out, but I'm glad, mate. 100% glad I stuck it out. Like, I grew up quite a lot. Had a really good section commander from 1RAR who helped shape me and kept me going and going there. Like, when I initially enlisted, I wanted to go to Armoured Corps, but it wasn't available at the time. So yeah, didn't put my trans in, but just went, right, I'll go to infantry then, and yeah, that was it, mate. So 6 weeks down at Kapuka, and I think after like 2 weeks, you get into the routine of it and whatnot, and yeah, after that it was all right. But I'm glad I only did it once.
So for you, when you're given, so for people who aren't like aware at how it works, Luke, do you, with your initial employment training, are you given like, do they go, okay, you can go to 1, you can go to 2, you can go to 3, you can go to 6, or how does it work? Like, do you actually select where you want to go, or are you placed somewhere?
No, I'm not sure what it's like now. This is back in 2002, so what's that? It's 20 something years ago.
Yep.
It's obviously changed a hell of a lot now. But you just go, like, you get given a choice. When I went through, you were just given a choice of where the army needed you. And I was hell bent on going to 6 RAR or 3 RAR. Like, I either wanted to go back to Brisbane. If I couldn't go to Brisbane, I wanted to go to Sydney and be a paratrooper. But that wasn't on the offer. So we got 1 RAR, 2 RAR, or 5/7. So it was Townsville or Darwin. And didn't really know, I barely knew where Townsville was. Knew where Darwin was. I knew it was hot, and I'm like, nah, I want to go there. In hindsight, I probably wish I had gone there. Like, it's one place I still haven't been to and I really want to get to. But yeah, I think my mate, because yeah, obviously after Kapuka, you do your initial employment training at Singleton for.
What was that like for you?
Yeah, really good actually. I actually really enjoyed it. Come out of Kapuka and gotten into that routine of being in the military, and got to Singleton and just absolutely loved it. Like, just lapped it up, and the training was pretty good. The instructors, it was all core focused. Like, it was real military. It was what I thought the army was supposed to be. Like, Kapuka was just like, I made it to put it politely, was
Mate, go for it. Go for it, mate.
it was it's just Kapuka is just teaching the absolute bare basics, and it was a little bit lacking in my opinion. But when I got to Singo, it was full on, mate. It was great. Like, really learning how to seek out and close with the enemy and capture and kill him, and really do what the description of an infantry soldier is.
So, mate, in your opinion, they should have soldiering begins here. Should be at Singleton, not Kapuka.
Yeah, I suppose you could say that.
So you finish, and how long was your initial employment training before you actually went up to RAR?
I think off the top of my head, it might have been 12 weeks or 16 weeks, but I can't remember, mate. It was so long ago.
Well, I remember you saying to me, like, just before we were like, oh, it was hot in Darwin, but mate, Townsville's hot too. So
yeah, 100%. Yeah, I was like, well, what's further away from the equator?
Yeah.
But now, like, I've lived up here I've lived up in North Queensland for 20 years now, and I can't even think of living anywhere else. We've been over WA a little bit in the last little while. We've been over to Europe this year, and it gets cold and it's good for a while, but after that, I'm like, nah, get me back to the heat, get me back to humidity.
Yeah, no, nice. So you get up to 2 RAR, and what was going on at 2, mate, when you arrived in? Was it just training, or what was happening at the battalion?
So when we got there, 2 RAR had just come back from. I think I just returned from an UNTAET deployment to East Timor. I think it was the second or third rotation over there, so we just missed out on that. So we basically got there during the middle of rear details, and so for those that aren't from the military, rear details is basically people that get left behind that aren't able to deploy through, whether they're discharging, corps transferring, mostly injured, and generally they're pretty dejected sort of people that aren't very positive. So it was a little bit of a false start getting there. So we were there for about 5 or 6 weeks before the battalion came back off their stand down period, and we got assigned to our companies and our platoons, and really got stuck into it, and started doing starting to blend, starting to get into our companies and sections, and start doing all those infantry minor tactics, and starting from baby steps, working all the way through to section, platoon, company level, battalion level tactics. It was it was great. I had a great time.
So, mate, you get to the battalion, and then something happens, mate, and you don't go on your first deployment to the Sollies. What happened here, and how'd you overcome it?
So late 2002, we're out in a PT run at the back of the barracks, and I snapped my posterior cruciate ligament, PCL, which was essentially made the start of an 18-month rehab program. An army rehab program back then was almost non-existent. You still stayed in your company, in your platoon, and just took yourself off to appointments, and there wasn't much of a sense of urgency on getting soldiers repaired back then. It was more of a focus, on if you can't do your job, then then get out of the way. So it was a little bit disparaging as an 18-year-old when you're just starting your career, and then you get an injury straight up. And my section, I think my platoon, my section, we just done section comp as well, which I had to sit out because I was injured, and they'd won that section comp or platoon comp, whatever it was, and the winner of that basically got put on the Solomon Islands, was the first to go into the Solomon Islands and the Regional Assistance Mission, Solomon Islands, I think it was called, Ramsey. Mate, so I got left on the sidelines for that one, and then I think at the same time we had a platoon or a company go over to on the first and second SecDet in Baghdad. Mate, it sucked. It was shit ass, mate, watching all your mates go on deployment, which is all you want to do, and mate, just had to suck it up and do the rehab, and in that time, because you got treated pretty shitty. You got treated pretty shit if you were injured. So that time went well because how didn't really appreciate that. So I put a corps transfer in to go off to Armoured Corps, and which is where I wanted to go initially. And mate, the rest is history. Spent the next 6 years in the Armoured Corps.
So for you, mate, as you mentioned, it was for you being that 18-year-old, you snap, you have a pretty significant injury, and you're seeing your mates deploy, and you're already feeling down already for not being able to deploy, but also having your injury. Was that for you, looking back now, was that the first real time you had to overcome the first bit of adversity in your military career?
Oh, definitely, mate. Look, it's looking back, it's definitely where you start building your resilience. I suppose I suppose the way that you got treated back then in this day and age would probably be called bullying. But mate, it's character building too. It's character building, it's resilience building. It's learning how to take a bit of criticism and take a bit of shit. Like if in my opinion, like you need to be able to take that sort of feedback from people to build that resilience about you. Like people these days talk about being resilient. They don't know what being resilient is, mate. Like you need to be treated like shit to know how to build your own resilience.
Yeah, mate, I absolutely agree with you. I think it's these days, mate, if you even raise your voice now, I'm offended. Like it's different to when you and I were going through, mate, because you did get yelled at, and you had to find resolve in yourself, mate. You had to work it out, and you had to, there was no political correctness back then, mate.
No, definitely not, mate. And I don't regret that for a second. I don't begrudge anyone anything, mate. It formed me into like I think I'm a pretty resilient sort of person now. Like throw pretty much whatever at me, and a bit of like water off the duck's back, mate. It doesn't really bother me. Like people, being offended, mate's a state of opinion. Like it's not a state of being. It's a state of opinion. If you're offended, well, that's your opinion. You choose to be offended. Like you read something on Facebook, mate, and offends you. Well, scroll on. Who cares?
Oh, mate. Oh, God. Social media. Yes. Isn't it great, mate? Isn't it fantastic? Keyboard warriors, mate. We could talk about that for, the next hour, but no. Yep. So you, as you mentioned, you then transfer into the Armoured Corps, which is where you wanted to go. And what was the training like for you, like going to Pucker?
Loved it, mate. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, it's like I've always loved vehicles, always had a love of big vehicles, whether they be tractors, bulldozers, excavators. Like doing that in the military, like getting into the whole armoured side of things and, working around tanks, APCs and ASLabs was just phenomenal. Loved it. Like the first few weeks was always infantry minor tactic stuff, which was, essentially a walk in the park. It was just a revision of everything I've done for the last 4 years in the infantry. And then you go on to do, I think about 6 weeks of the comms phase. Again, I don't know what it's like now. At the time, the comms phase, it really dragged out, but the cavalry have a really good reputation in the military of having really good comms and being able to talk on the radio really effectively and quickly and get the message across really effectively and quickly. And after working overseas and working in an all-corps environment, you can really see how that shines through. And that's helped me an awful lot through to today, into my career today in fire and rescue, being able to talk quickly and effectively and task on the radio. So looking back, even though at the time it was drawing out and you're getting so sick of looking at radios and comm sets and FFCSs and all this sort of thing, like now looking back, I really appreciate it. And then so after your comms phase, you go through to driving and servicing. And mate, that is essentially getting paid to drive the military's premier fighting vehicles as hard as you can in all sorts of terrain and weather, and get paid for it, mate. And road run them down to Melbourne, out to Shepparton, up the Bonnie Doon, mate. It was such a good time. And then finishing off with the gunnery phase, which is where you get your first little touch of getting behind the 50 cal and having a little shoot with a 25 million turret, mate. And like that's just, if you don't like, if you didn't have an interest in that, mate, you're in the wrong place. Like that was just so good.
So, mate, boyhood dream. Just let's go and blow shit up. Like this is, is 100%.
Yep, 100%, mate. It's like being in the infantry, but being in a vehicle. Like it's still the same sort of tactics and stuff. It's just being in a vehicle and doing it at 10 times the speed.
I remember I spoke to a tanky mate when I went over to Gallipoli in 2015 and for the centenary of Anzac Day, and I said, "Why did you go into tanks?" And he said, "Why stroll when you can roll?" And
100%, mate. Second class ride's better than the first class walk.
That's it, mate. And you'd done it the opposite first. You'd gone infantry, and then so you'd know, like you knew what it was like to pack march, mate. Yeah, as he said, why stroll when you can roll? Exactly.
Nah, and I'm glad I started off in the infantry because the infantry's a hard job, mate. Like when you're out bush, it's a hard job, mate. You know, you're humping 30, 40, 50, up to 50 kilo packs, carrying your whole house on your back, plus your ammo, water, food. Like, it makes you appreciate how it makes the rest of your career pretty easy. Like, we were talking the other day about being stuck in the rain for a bit, and I remember being in the infantry and going up to Tully and doing the jungle warfare training centre up there. And, you go up there, mate, and you get up in the morning, you get out of your hoochie, you get wet, mate. Like, it's the wettest place in Australia. You patrol all day being wet and dirty and gross. Then you get in your farter at night, you go to bed wet, you get dry during the night because you're in your sleeping bag. You wake up in the morning, rinse, repeat, mate. No showers, no nothing. So, when I go out now and you get wet during the day or something, you're like, I really don't care. Like,
Yep.
I know I'm going home at 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock. I'm going to the pub, I'm getting a shower, I'm getting a beer and a hot feed. Like,
yeah, it makes you appreciate it, mate. And I can resonate with that with, being, because, fiery like you last year with the floods, mate, exactly the same thing. Getting, you go and help these guys, you'd be in shit and stuff. And then you kind of felt sorry, mate, because, they had nothing and you were going home to, as you say, have a warm shower, a beer, go to the pub, have a feed. And it does, mate. It sort of makes you appreciate, just how good you have got it. And so it's 100%. So how's it work, mate? So you got to, after Pucker, you then go to the 2nd 14th Light Horse Regiment. And do you start, so after you've done Pucker, is it you become a driver, or how does it work?
Yeah, so you basically start your career as a driver, whether that be, back then when you're in the APCs, the ASLAV, or the Abram was just coming in. But yeah, everyone starts their career as a driver, so you get to your regiment and your squadron. Mate, you get assigned to your crew, you get your vehicle, and mate, you look after that thing like it's your own car. You probably look after it better than it's your own car. Mate, you blend in, you form part of your crew, and with the ASLAVs, you got your driver, your gunner, and your crew commander. Mate, and you're just working like that, mate. If you've ever seen the movie Fury, it's pretty close, mate, to what it's like. They've nailed that pretty well. Wasn't it? Obviously I wasn't around during World War II, but the the banter between the crew and that, mate, is pretty. It's what it's like, mate.
So did you, at that stage, mate, did you have a young crew with you, or were they sort of an experienced crew?
No, I was, because I'd come from the infantry. I didn't get treated like shit like some of the other newer guys did. Like, I had a few runs on the boards. I had a bit of cred, and I got put in a pretty experienced crew. We've got a really good crew commander, and I got a really good gunner, and they'd just come off rotations from SecDet, so they were really experienced, well-drilled crews. Everyone there, mate. There was no one in cavalry in those days who didn't have operational experience. Like, there was only 2 regiments of ASLABs, and everyone wanted them, mate. Like, whether you were in Afghanistan or Iraq, everyone wanted them. Like, it was the premier platform. Like, you couldn't beat it for speed and firepower. And you could. I haven't seen the new vehicles, but I'd argue that I don't know, mate. I probably sound like an old army guy now, and I'd argue that you'd find something hard that beats that vehicle. Like, it was just such a good vehicle. Yeah.
So for you, and you got there, mate, and sort of immediately were, like, as you say, Afghanistan was in full. Because did you get there in 07? You got there, or 06?
It was 06. I'm just looking through what I sent through to you. I think it was 06. It was 06 or 07 that I got there.
And that was starting to really ramp up in Afghanistan at that point. And for you, what was... So were you starting, like, you were going to go as part of the Reconstruction Task Force 2, and like, for you, what was that like? That you missed out on the, a few years before on the Solis. Were you getting excited that you were actually going to go and deploy and do what you serve your country?
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Like I was stoked. Like from the time that my core transfer got accepted and I went into Paco, like the writing was on the wall, mate. You know, like from the moment you march into Paco, they're like, you will be overseas in the next 12 months. Like everyone's down here is going to be overseas in the next 12 months. So SecDets, the SecDet security detachment in Baghdad was a pretty common deployment then, as was AMTGs, which then merged into the OBG battle group in southern Iraq. I was pretty keen on getting a SecDet trip because all the videos and stuff you're seeing from there, like again, mate, it's the labs like absolutely flying through the streets, primacy of right away on the road. You know, large threat. There's been some pretty significant IEDs going off over there, and you know, it was a pretty cool place to be, if that's what you're into.
Yeah.
And yeah, mate. So when I got to Pucker, I think 2Cav got the call up for the first rotation to Afghanistan on Reconstruction Task Force 1. And then yeah, the rumours on the street. I never went to a regiment chasing a deployment to go anywhere in particular. I was happy to go back to Brisbane. I'd spent 4 years in Townsville, so I was pretty happy to go back to Brizzy. So I never chased a regiment for a deployment. Like I was going to come up anyway. So yeah, we got to C Squadron, did a couple of bush trips. I think it was on our second bush trip. They're like, righto. I think we had like a section comp or a squadron competition, and our section won it. And they're like, righto, you guys are next on the Orbat to go on RTF2. You'll be marrying up with 1 RAR and 3 CR and starting your lead up training in a few weeks. And that was it, mate. Like that was it, mate. And that was basically the tempo for the next 2-3 years of my career. Just deploy, you know, train, deploy, have leave, reset, do it all again.
So was Poppy Pierce, mate? Was he in 214 or was he in where was he when, and how was his death?
Yeah, mate. He was. Poppy came through. Poppy came through just after me, and he was up there on an MRE. And he was in the same squadron as us, but he just missed out on. I think he missed out just through timings of getting to the regiment. And he came over. He came over and on RTF3 on the rotation that replaced us, mate. And it was terrible.
Because it would have been, well, for you guys, mate, a shock, and that, you know, like from what I heard from some of the guys, mate, just an absolute gentleman, really, really nice bloke. And
he was, mate. He was an absolute legend, like absolute legend. And you just couldn't find a better bloke than him, mate. Like in the army, like the army's full of them. The army's full of those sort of guys. But yeah, it sucked balls, mate. Like his family, mate, that was shit.
Oh, mate, and mate, I thank you for, you know, sharing, mate. I know how hard it is for all you boys. That, you know, it's any soldier that's lost in, you know, serving their country is you know, it's tragedy, mate. But when you personally knew him, yeah, it's even more so.
Mate, you can't talk enough. You can't talk enough about that guy and how good he was. Like just such a good dad and good guy. And it was a big shake up to the Armoured Corps as well. Like we thought we're pretty bulletproof in those vehicles, especially the driver. We thought we were pretty bulletproof in there. And then to see what happened to him and it put everyone back in their seats a bit and not saying make it more real, but yeah, made us realise we weren't as bulletproof as we thought we were.
And you're playing for keeps, and that it's, you know, as you say, it's real. This is, you know, it's a dangerous business what we're doing.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
So for you, mate, you deploy in early 2007 to Afghanistan and Uruzgan province, and you got an injury. Can you tell us what happened and what happened next?
Yeah, so I've been in country for, I'm not too sure, 2 or 3 months, maybe 4. And so when we first arrived there, we were still up in the original Special Forces compound. They hadn't built the stables down in the Dutch compound yet. And so the vehicles that were there had been, you know, utilised fairly extensively during RTF1's period. So when we moved down to the stables in the Dutch compound, they'd send a team over from Australia, I think, of mechanics and that to basically service these vehicles, and they grounded a whole lot of them. When I say a whole lot, it might have been 2 or 3 or 4 vehicles. So the boss came up with a plan to re-roll a few of us, so drivers and gunners and crewies and that into different roles to keep the battle space going and keep the battle rhythm going to achieve the commander's intent. So he decided that me and another guy who was an ex-infantry fellow as well would become dismounts. We'd form a dismounted section. So we started training our guys up for that. It was going to be essentially a dismounted section in the back of one of our personnel carriers. And as we're doing some training, mate, we were teaching how to do what's called a tunnel of love, which is a technique used for breaking contact. And as I stood up, mate, my knees given that same knees given way, and I've injured that again. I haven't snapped the PCL again. I can't remember exactly what it did, but it was enough to get me sent back to Q8 for scans, and it wasn't going to rehab enough in time to get me back into theatre. So they sent me back to Australia to rehab it there. So yeah, mate, did that. Came back to Australia. The rehab process was a little bit better then, and I think just maybe from just being in cavalry as well, like not as many people as what the infantry had, like only 2 regiments of cavalry guys. They needed a rehab to get you back on the Orbat. So did a rehab, marched back into A Squadron, who were lining up to do the next Overwatch battle group, and the subsequent last Overwatch battle group trip to Iraq. So yeah, mate, slotted into there and headed back over to the Middle East and spent, I think it was only about 7 or 8 months by the end of that trip. So.
And what was that like for you, mate? Like, obviously, you'd experienced Afghanistan, and then you go to Iraq. And what was different about Iraq, mate, compared to Afghanistan?
Oh, a lot. It's a shithole. Afghanistan's a beautiful place, mate. Like I would legitimately love to go back there one day, and jump on on an adventure bike or something and do a tour through there. Like it is just a stunning country. Even something like we've obviously got into snowboarding in the last 12 months, and I remember flying over those mountains there, mate, and looking down. It's like just now knowing like what such good snow looks like. I'm like, man, I'd love to go back snowboarding or what's his name? I've spoken to him a couple of times across social media. He's got point assist. I can't remember his name. He's an ex-SAS guy.
Mark
Doreen.
Yeah, Mark.
Yeah. I was having a chat to him a couple of times. He's a bit of a motorbike rider as well. And I had a chat to him about some of the stuff they did over there. And I'm like, man, I'd love to go over there and do a trip over there on the motorbike. It's just such a beautiful place. And probably won't happen now for a while. But yeah, mate, Iraq. So put in a comparison to Iraq. So we were in southern Iraq at a place called Talil, which is down in Nasiriyah. Nasiriyah is a pretty interesting place for history. So when America first invaded Iraq back in 2002, Nasiriyah was where they hit the first lot of resistance, and they got absolutely caned there. So very, very staunch little town. But it's also where the Ziggurat of is. And the Ziggurat is apparently birthplace of religion, mate. And if that's a birthplace of religion, I would hazard a pretty good guess that religion probably woke up, scratched his ass, looked around, and went and found somewhere else to go, mate. Because that place is an absolute shithole. Like it is as flat for as far as you can see. There's no trees. Like we'd go on patrol and see a tree and be like, holy shit, it's a tree. Like just get super excited to see a tree. It stinks of oil. It's a shithole, mate. Like I hated it. The work we're doing was cool, but in terms of like scenery and like it was just no scenery, mate. Like it was just, and it was hot, and it was hot as hell during the summer times, like 50 plus degrees for a good 3 months at a time. And the winter was minus temperatures. Like it's just.
So it sort of, mate, what you're explaining to me, sort of in comparison, mate, is the Hay Plains just hot, not snow, but hot, as flat as the eye can see, and a tree every 15 kilometers.
Yeah, 100%. Just give us 2 seconds, mate.
No, you're all right, mate. All good.
Hang on 2 seconds. Hey, sorry, mate.
No, you're all right, mate. All good.
I've got a very racist dog, and there were some people walking past.
That's all good, mate. All good. So, yeah, so you were over there, and what was the work you were doing, mate? Like, what was the work you were doing over there?
So we were basically we were the Overwatch for the south. So we sat near, like I said, this place called Talil, which is outside of Nazareth, and that sits basically halfway between Basra and Baghdad. And we'd provide Overwatch on the highways, looking for people laying IEDs, people trying to smuggle weapons up Route Tampa. Was it Route Tampa? Yeah, I think it was Route Tampa. Route Tampa's basically Tampa. I can't remember, mate. It was so long ago. Anyway, the main highway that goes from Kuwait all the way through to Baghdad and up to Turkey. So yeah, we did that, mate. Took a lot of people around for key leadership engagements. Provided basically an armored convoy of protection for them. Like big target, hard to hit. Travel around very, very slowly. The IED threat in Iraq was huge. What they would do is build what's called an EFP, an explosive form projectile, which is basically a cylinder that's filled with explosives, and they get a copper disc, which is then concaved inside of this cylinder. They would then, just essentially it's a shape charge, they'd then aim that in the direction of an oncoming vehicle, and then set that on a passive, on either a command detonated trigger or on a beam. And what they do, mate, is just go and get like your sensor light from their local shop, and the sensor light obviously has a beam on it. As soon as you break that beam, that's what turns the light on. They would adapt that to, as soon as you break that beam, that's what would detonate the IED or the EFP. And mate, those EFPs were something that probably cost them $10 or $20 to make. They would defeat multi-million-dollar main battle tanks like that. Once that charge goes off, that concave disc would then become convexed and would be just like a massive, big copper penetrating slug that would literally go through engine blocks and would literally take out tanks.
Yeah, right.
So to overcome that, and then they then also have someone sitting off that device. So if it didn't go off, they'd then be sitting on a mobile phone, and they could detonate that with a mobile phone as well through dual tone multi-frequency. I can't believe I remembered that. Dual tone multi-frequency initiated device. Basically, you key in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10 on your phone, hit the call button, boom, that detonates it. Or they'd have a command wire, which would just be a bit of copper wire going all the way back, 100, 200, 300, 400 meters back. And that's it there with a clicker, and off you go. So the reason we'd have to go so slow is we had a device on the front of our car that would send out, it was essentially microwaves that would pre-detonate that beam. So that would break that beam and it would pre-detonate the device before we got there. And then we also had devices on our vehicles that would jam radio and mobile phone signals.
Yep.
But for that to be effective, we had to travel quite slowly. So yeah, mate, just big, long, hot days cruising the highways there, looking at nothing, thinking of Australia, and had a good, indeed wrong. We had we did some pretty cool stuff over there. I was only a driver for a little bit over there. Most of the time I spent over there, I was a shooter in the back of one of the LAV PCs. So I had a pretty cool time, mate. Did pretty cool stuff. The base in Iraq was massive. We had to think about the Hungry Jacks and Pizza Hut there, and it was pretty cruisy. Yeah, mate, it was an interesting time.
So, mate, for that, because the IED threat in Afghanistan, that was different, wasn't it? It was a different, I've heard that from a lot of veterans who served in Iraq that said, yeah, the IED threat in Iraq was very, very different to the IED threat in Afghanistan. And why was that, mate? Was it more better education for Iraq? What was it?
I think it's battlefields. You look at any sort of battlefield from Vietnam. Let's go back to Vietnam. So there's a couple of good books written on Vietnam from an armored point of view. When the Allied forces went into Vietnam, the Viet Cong would take them on in a gunfight. So they're basically trying to you're taking on a much larger formed military with a bunch of AK-47s. So you got 120 mil smoothbore cannons and 50 cal machine guns taking out guys with AK-47s. It doesn't take an uneducated person long to figure out that the weapon's overmatched. You're just going to get smashed. So, they then get crafty, and like I said, mate, they go and spend 10 to 20 bucks at their local Bunnings and start making devices that can overcome multi-million-dollar vehicles. And that's the way the battle space, mate, has worked basically through, it's how it worked in Vietnam. It's how it worked when Iraq first kicked off. Like the insurgency over there tried to smash them through shootouts and, direct engagements first, and then went, yep, we're getting caned, and then went into, a bit more dirty tactics. The same thing happened over in Ireland, in Northern Ireland. And the same thing happened in Afghanistan, mate. Like, it's just the progression of the battle space in that time. Like, who knows what the next one will look like. But when you have, you don't take a knife to a gunfight, mate. Like, you don't take an AK-47 or an RPG and put it up against a 25 mil Bushmaster chain gun. Like, you're just going to get prosecuted, mate. That's what happened. Like, so RTF 1, 2, 3, and 4, mate, they just, like, the Taliban just got prosecuted. Like Special Forces did a really good job of going in behind the lines and taking them on, and with really good tactics and weapons. And then when the regular forces came in, they still wanted to try and shoot it out with this. They thought an RPG would, and it can, obviously an RPG can penetrate an armoured vehicle, but they can't shoot them, mate. They don't have the training. So they'd shoot these RPGs at us, and then we just turned around with multi-million-dollar equipment, multi-million-dollar ballistic computers and buttons and high explosive ammunition, and send them on their way.
It's as you say, mate. It's evolved, and who knows, mate? As you say, drones are already being used in between Ukraine and Russia. So who knows what.
You can't compare what's happening in the Ukraine to anything that we ever experienced. That is proper trench warfare, mate. Like, that is full on. Like, we had some pretty good contacts and incidents, but nothing. Like, we were the bullies, mate. Like, we were the big kids with the big cool toys. We were never in as much danger as what they are in the Ukraine. That's nuts, mate.
Oh, absolutely, mate. No, it's almost back to, First World War, mate, trench warfare. And it's like back to, we've gone full circle. 100 years ago, we were in trenches, and now we're back in trenches again. Like, it's, just crazy, just crazy. And so for you, mate, you do Iraq, and then you come, like, at that point, you decide to put your application in for fire rescue. And how did this come about?
I think at stage I'd probably been in the military for 8 years, must have been 6 years, 8 years. I was looking for a change. I was probably over it. I'd done what I wanted to do. Didn't think that the deployment's going to keep going for as long as they did. And hadn't, like, always had an interest in police or fire and rescue. So I thought, what have I got to lose? I was on my own, and thought, I'll put in for it. And especially being over in Iraq for 8 months, you had a lot of time to think about what the rest of your career, your rest of your life's going to be like. And I didn't want it to be in the military. I'd have my time and have my fun. And mate, came back to Australia. I can't remember when I got back. I spent the rest of the year doing some courses, and got a posting up at the 3rd, 4th Cavalry Regiment in Townsville. Which put me offside. I didn't want to go back to Townsville. I was happy in Brisbane. I was starting to create a life there, and so that sort of pissed me off a bit. So I thought, and look, I didn't want to go out dejected. Like, that's the army, mate. Like, you're either on board or you're overboard, and I didn't want to be a dejected, soldier. So I thought, right, well, not for me anymore. So I applied for police and fire and rescue, and mate, fireys came through quicker than the police. I had a bit of a bad driving record when I was younger. So, but I'd also applied. I've always had an interest in aviation as well. So I'd actually also applied for Corps transfer to be a loadmaster within the aviation corps, and I'd done my testing for them, and had done fairly well. So they asked if I wanted to go and do some more aptitude testing for the pilot training, which I'd passed again. And then it came all the way down. So I was pretty excited. I was like, yeah, sweet. Like, I'm going to become a pilot, flying Black Hawks and doing all sorts of cool things. And anyway, I got to the final med board, and the doctors had looked from med docs, and he said I've had a knee reco and re-injured it again. And he said, sorry, mate, you can't be a pilot. I said, why? I said, I've been in a combat corps for the last 6 years, what it was, and I said, oh, don't worry about it, I'll go be a load master. That'll still be pretty cool. He's like, no, you can't do that either. You got to go do combat survival training, and which, now knowing what combat survival training is, got nothing on what being an infantry soldier or even what infantry minor tactics are within cavalry. But anyway, that's the way the big army worked, and I think the Fireys came through not long after that and said, mate, we got a position for you.
So did that doctor, mate? Did he say what your knee wouldn't hold up, or what was it?
He was, so basically he was saying that because in the situation, so in the scenario that helicopter goes down, you have to escape and evade the enemy, that your knee isn't going to be fit for that. And being a load master, you spend a lot of time on your knees in the back of the helicopter, loading, unloading, and looking and underslinging and all those sort of things. And no, your knee wouldn't put up with that. And I tried to argue it, but I had a Lance Corporal trying to argue with a medical officer, major or lieutenant colonel, whoever he was.
Yeah,
I was never going to win that fight, mate.
No, so talk me through, mate. Has the training now and the process changed for fire rescue, from when you went through?
The application process has. The recruit course hasn't changed much at all. The application process when I joined was you did all your testing, your fitness and your aptitude, and you put down the locations that you wanted to go and be employed in. So, and that's all you got selected for. So I think I originally put in Brisbane and the Gold Coast, and there must have been one before I posted back to Townsville. And so when I got to Townsville, I think I changed it to Townsville and Brisbane, I think. So that's all I was going to be selected for. And they gave me a call and said, hey, we've got a position in Bowen in North Queensland. Would you be interested in interviewing for that? And by that stage, I was well over the army. I was well over the institution. I'm not saying it's bad by any means. It just wasn't for me anymore. So yeah, I jumped at it, mate. Again, didn't have anything really holding me back. So yeah, mate, took that opportunity. I'd already been force assigned to redeploy back to Afghanistan, which I was pretty excited about. I was going over this time as a crew commander, and we were attached to 2RAR, so back to my old battalion, and so obviously knew a lot of the guys back there. So I was pretty excited to deploy with them, and they subsequently had quite a good trip. I was in. Chris May was in the same section that I was going to be in, and working with a lot of really cool guys. Justin Huggets was one of the platoon sergeants in there, and just a bunch of really good guys. So I was pretty excited for that. But again, mate, the Fireys came up. It was incredibly hard. Been waiting for 2 years at that point for a position, and I was like, no, I don't want to lose this. And so I walked in the OC's office and said, hey, boss, I'm out of here. And that was it, mate. It took about 2 months of leave, where I went and worked on a station, a cattle station out west, just filling in some time, and then yeah, mate, started the recruit course down in Brizzy. So
for you, mate, geez, that's a tough, mate. Like, you're getting dangled a carrot in one hand of deploying again over to Afghanistan, and then, as you say, you made your mind up to go fire rescue, and mate, very tough place to sit in.
Yeah, I think for me at the time, mate, it was a pretty easy decision, to be honest. Yeah, like, I was pretty excited to go overseas, but I was more excited to start the rest of my life. It's hard, it is very hard to get into the fire service. There's a lot of people that apply. So to make it all the way through to that, I wasn't sure if if that position still be there for me when I got back. So I was like, no, I've got to do this. And so, yeah, mate, made the decision and jumped in feet first.
And I think for you, Luke, too, it would have been a hard decision if you hadn't deployed before, but you'd already, you'd had those deployments. So I think, if it roles reversed where you hadn't have deployed, it might have been a different decision for you, but because you'd had that, those couple of deployments to Afghanistan and to Iraq, it was, as you say, it was an easy decision for you to make. And mate, halfway through your process, Cyclone Yazi hit, and you were deployed to assist. And how bad was the devastation, mate, when you actually hit the ground? Because obviously for you, like, you'd been in a war zone, but this is a natural disaster that is something totally different. How was it on the ground when you actually got your feet on the ground?
Yeah, two different things. Hey, it was pretty cool. Like, I actually really enjoyed going on a DAC tasking, so DAC's Defence Assistance to the Civil Community. So it was really enjoyable. Didn't realise when we first deployed, like, obviously Cyclone Yasi came through, and we knew that we would be tasked post the event to go and assist in the cleanup and whatnot. Didn't realise though that that would roll into working with fire and rescue and their urban search and rescue teams, rapid damage assessment teams, going into places like Tully Heads and Mission Beach, Innisfail. Being the first vehicles to roll through, to roll from Townsville up through there, seeing all the beach that, all the sand that covered Cardwell, essentially moved the whole beach up onto the high on the Bruce Highway. But it was cool. Like, I really enjoyed it. Being able to help your own people. It was it really solidified in my mind that the career change that I was making was definitely what I wanted to do. Like staying in my own country, my own backyard, and doing my job operationally each time. Like with the military, you train, to go and fight overseas. You don't get an opportunity all that often. A little bit different back then, I suppose. We've been overseas a fair bit, but you don't get to do your job fighting every day. Whereas as a fiery or a copper or an ambo, you do your job every day, mate. Like every time those bells drop or your pager goes off, it's a real job. Like you're actually going to help someone, and when they're having a bit of a shitty day and a bit of a shitty time, and it's your time to do your work, and that's what I really like about it.
Absolutely. No, I think, mate, it's something that being a first responder, you know it too, mate. There's just something about it, and so rewarding too when you're seeing people at their absolute worst, and you're there to help them and restore normality for them, and you can't beat it, mate. Like for me, there's nothing better than being in a fire, mate, and you fight the arse with this fire, and then you save this person's house, and they come and give you a big hug and a cup of tea, mate. There's nothing better. Like for me, that lights it up for me. Like it just makes me feel fulfilled.
Yeah, 100%, mate. Yeah, it's that Australian spirit and whatnot. Look, everyone, how the Australian community comes together in times of need is, mate. And I don't think that's just Australian, like an Australian way. I think it's just everyone in general, mate.
Oh, absolutely.
Cool to see humanity sometimes.
Absolutely. And for you, mate, as you mentioned, previously that you wanted to, you were ready to transition out of defence and start the rest of your life. But was there still that for you, mate, separating from the army? Was there still that, like, did you sort of feel that you'd lost a bit of your identity, or you were ready to sort of move on to the next stage?
No, I knew I was ready to move on to the next stage, and I kept my foot in the door with the Army Reserve for a few years after that. So I still had that link back in there, and knew that if it didn't work out, I always had that link to get back in there if I needed to. But no, mate, I was definitely ready to move on, and don't get me wrong, it still took me probably, I reckon, a good 6 years to really transition out of the military way of life and become a full civilian, and not think about or care about what's going on. But even saying that, mate, like I still sort of keep a half sort of look on what's what they're up to and what new vehicles or equipment they're getting, or what potential deployments or that they're looking at. And so I don't think I'll ever lose it, but it probably took me a good 6 years before I knew that I didn't want to go back.
I think, mate, the old saying is you bleed green, but now you also bleed blue too, mate. Blue and red now. So
Yeah, mate, I'm probably more of a bisexual than I am a and I am an army brat or something.
Absolutely. So, mate, what can you remember of your training, and what was it like now being finally, you're going through the hot cell, you're learning about flashover, you're learning about backdraft, all these things that, and like the chemical reactions and all that sort of like what painting the door, and what was that like for you?
It was cool, mate. Look, it was a whole new skill. It was like something it was something I'd never learnt before. It was something totally foreign. Never really thought of, I'd always thought it'd be a pretty cool job to be a fiery, but never sort of really appreciated how much they actually do. And it's a lot, mate. Look, it's a 16-week course and it is a lot to take in. There is so much stuff that you're expected to know as a firefighter, whether that be road crash rescue, structural firefighting, grass fires or vegetation fires, chemical incidents, rescue, different alarm panels, different buildings, how fire is going to behave in different buildings, different pumps, hoses, what this hose does, what that hose does, branches. Mate, there's so much. Like it's a lot more than it's probably a lot more than I thought originally. Yeah.
So for you, mate, what was the like going into the hot cell for the first time and being in the dark and what was that like for you?
That was all right, mate. Some people balked at it, but I had confidence in our training and equipment and our instructors. Like we had some really good instructors that have spent a lot of time and that. And there, obviously, it's hot, mate. Like it's hot. It's fire, mate. Look,
Yes.
That ain't the bloody snow. It's not comfortable, but that old saying, get comfortable being uncomfortable, and that live fire academy there, mate, is so good. It's a pity we don't get to go there more. We do a lot of skills maintenance training, especially a lot of the rescue stuff that I do, like do level 2 rescue. We do a lot, every 2 years we go back into skills maintenance, but I haven't been through live fire since I left recruit school. I've been to a few house fires and structure fires, but you don't get to get that ongoing skills progression, and that's something I really think that we could do a bit more of. But yeah, mate, that live fire training, I loved it. Yeah, running fuel fires and compartment fires and ship's hulls, and yeah, mate, sick.
So for you, mate, was that down at Brisbane? Did you actually have to go down to Brisbane for your training, or?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so I took my car down, and mate, nothing like the military. I expected us to be staying in some sort of barracks block accommodation, forward or a room or something like that, and follow my GPS into Kangaroo Point to a multi-story apartment complex with the 2-bedroom unit looking straight into the Brisbane River that I shared with one other guy, and with all our meals paid for at the Story Bridge Hotel. Like, it was phenomenal. I could not believe it. I was like, this is unreal.
Mate, that is you're not army anymore, mate. So
Nah.
So where were you posted to after you graduate? And talk me through that, mate. For everything that you've been through, you finally got through all the testing, you graduate. How proud were you, mate, to march out as a, Queensland Fire Rescue firefighter?
Yeah, I was stoked. I was really happy, really proud, really. Look, it's a hard, like, and you talk any fire, mate. It's a long process to get in, and it's not necessarily hard. Like, you don't have to be a bloody brain surgeon to do it. You put in the wet stuff and the hot stuff, mate. Look, it's not that difficult, but there's a lot of people that want to do it. So you got to beat a lot of people to get there. So that was really cool. And then so knowing then that I had a really good career, I never wanted to get out of the army without something good to go into. Like, a lot of people fall in that trap. They do get disillusioned in the military, and they get out, on a shoot from the hip sort of reaction, and then they're back in there 2-3 months later, and they're even more dejected because they feel like they've failed in the outside world. So I never wanted to get out without having a really good career. And I personally knew it had to be something that was semi-regimented because I was just used to that, and that's just the sort of person I am. So I still needed some sort of rank structure, but didn't need it to be as strict as what the military was. So I knew it was good to go, mate. And yeah, mate. So I was just frothing to get back up and get into it.
So where were you posted, mate, and what station were you at, and what do you remember your first shift, and how were you received by the guys at the station?
So I started my career in Bowen, which is a small town of about 10,000 people, just south of Townsville, 2 hours south of Townsville. Beautiful place on the coast. Got 2 shifts there. Very autonomous station. Separated by distance of 2.5 hours from Townsville, so you're left alone quite a lot in there. Had a fairly junior crew. Bowen's got a pretty high turnover of staff there. It's had a fairly junior crew, but that wasn't a bad thing either. Like, the good thing about having a junior crew is that everyone is keen to train. Everyone's doing their first 3 years, called Q-Step, doing their first 3 years of study. So everyone's keen to train. No one wants to sit in the chairs that much. My officer was an acting station officer who'd been in the job for quite some time, had a lot of experience, a really good guy. And the other shift was a fairly junior crew with a pretty experienced officer. So I had a great time. Like, my first shift there, I think literally within about half an hour, we got called to a structure fire. Didn't turn out to be a structure fire, but I was like, this is unreal. Like, holy shit, first day on shift. I haven't been half an hour, we're going to structure fire. It's great. And then ended up having a rather large grass fire in the afternoon at the Collinsville. And we're there the whole night, and I was like, this is great. This is fantastic. Loved it. Yeah, absolutely loved it. And I love small country towns too, mate. So, small team environment, mate, just suited me to the ground.
So, mate, I want to go forward to in 2012. Can you share with us? There's a structure fire, and what happened when you got there?
Yeah, so my first proper structure fire. It was a callback. So in Bowen, we don't do night shifts. We just carry a pager and come back in the station with the auxiliary staff after 3 hours. And we've been called to smoke issuing from a property, and we arrived. When we got there, a guy came running over to me and said, "Oh, just be careful, lady inside is schizophrenia." So no worries, thanks, mate, for letting us know. And we got to the front door, and there's this big dog. I don't know, it was an Alsatian or a bull Arab or something like that, and it's absolutely cut and sick. It just doesn't want us to come inside. And anyway, so I had a DCP extinguisher, dry chemical extinguisher with me, and so I just given a quick squirt in the face with that, and off we went inside. And I was just dragging the hose for my mate. The fire was in the kitchen. There's pot that had been left on the stove, but had been burning for a fair while. Fairly easy fire to put out, not an awful lot to do. But a lady that we didn't know was in the house, who was affected by drugs, had come and jumped on my back and started screaming at me, "You're the devil, you're the devil, get out of my house." And I said, "I'm not the devil, I'm a firefighter, like, get off me." And she starts trying to pull my BA mask off. And like, the neutral plane is sort of coming down a bit, and you get a gut full of that smoke inside the house, and that'll send you to sleep, if not worse. Anyway, she's trying to pull my mask off. She's like, "No, you're the devil, get out of my house, get out of my house." I said, "I'm not the devil, get off." And I'm trying to like swing my arms around and try and shake her off me. As I'm doing that, my elbows clocked her straight in the face and knocked her out. So I said to Adam, "I've bloody knocked her out." He's like, "What'd you do?" I said, "She was trying to pull my mask off." He's like, "Oh, take her outside." So the cops and that rocked up by this stage, and so I picked her up, all ladder 49 style, and walked outside, and the cops like, "Oh, what bed did you rescue her?" I was like, "Nah, I knocked her out." They're like, "What?" I'm like, "I'll tell you later." Yeah. So we extinguished the fire and walked out. Like, "What happened?" And I told him, like, "Oh, yeah, don't worry about it. It's all good."
Oh, mate, what a way to start your first fire, like your first structure fire, mate. Like, you're the devil, you're the devil, get out. And yeah, like, wow, mate, in all honesty, looking back now, mate, and I say this, Luke, probably the best thing you actually did, knock her out, to actually get her out, because it's funny, mate. You look back now, and you don't want to bring harm to people, but as you say, mate, it's a dangerous job being in there, and having that going on. And as you say, trying to pull your mask off, if you inhale those, it's good night.
It's look, if she's listening, I'm sorry, but I'm not the devil. I'm still not the devil.
No, mate, you're a good bloke and a bloody good firefighter. So I think she might have woken up with a bit of a sore nose.
She might have been a bit sore, poor girl.
So, mate, after that, in your same year, you undertake, as you mentioned earlier, you undertake your level 2 rescue course, and then you're selected to do your swiftwater rescue. And what did you learn about? And was this a big learning curve for both these courses?
Yeah, mate. So the biggest thing I learned from doing a level 2 Swiftwater course is that how I survived being a kid and a teenager in Brisbane during the storm season is beyond me. I should probably be, I should probably have drowned about 30 years ago.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
yeah, mate. I would have learned about hydrology and stuff. Yeah, I probably should have died about 30 years ago. Some of the stuff we got up to as kids in storm drains and those big supercells, what they now call supercells, rolling through Brisbane. In my day, we just called them a storm. And I think supercell is a pretty good term that the media cocked up.
Absolutely.
But yeah, mate. So I was pretty keen to get into rescue. So Queensland's a bit different the way that other states operate. So fire and rescue is a lead authority for any sort of level 2 rescue capability. The academy, you get taught to level 1. Everyone does level 1 swiftwater, vertical rescue, confined space, trench, and urban search and rescue, which is very basic. And then if you want to, once you've spent a bit of time at station, you can then nominate to go through and do the level 2 courses, which are much, much more in depth, especially swiftwater and vertical rescue, which I've become heavily involved with now. So we've got the 5 disciplines that we do. So in New South Wales, you've got about 5 different organisations in New South Wales that all do rescue. And yeah, that presents a lot of challenges. Whereas in Queensland, we've got one organisation. We maintain the subject matter expert for that and the instructor realm for that, and it works really, really well. And after deploying to a couple of different states, I can see how well Queensland does it. So you have to start in Queensland. You have to start off with your level 2 swiftwater rescue, which is all in water rescue. So level 1 is all shore-based rescue techniques. Yelling at them, throwing them a rope, hopefully trying to reach for them or something. But it's all shore-based rescue. Whereas level 2 swiftwater is in water rescue. So what you'd see on TV of the guys and girls in the red and yellow wetsuits with the big PFDs and helmets on, what you see in New South Wales, same thing with the SES and police rescue with their special wetsuits, motorised boats, rafts, or IWPs we call them. And that's back then. That was it's still a 2-week course, run a little bit different now. So back then, you'd go down to Brisbane and do a week of rope training with the vertical rescue instructors, learning different knots, mechanical advantage hauling systems, how to build them, and how to build improvised anchors. Then you go back to your station, do a week or 2 back there, and then go up to Tully, State Mission Beach, and go out to Tully and do all your in-water stuff and IWP drills on the Tully River. A great course, fantastic course. They do it a little bit different now. The whole lot is done up on the Tully River at Mission Beach. You do all your rope rigging stuff with all the swiftwater instructors, and it's probably a much better way to do it, to be honest with you. And we've evolved so much. Like since 2012, obviously in 2011 we had the big floods in Brisbane and southeast. We had a big board of inquiry after that, which came out with a lot of recommendations post that, and they've been implemented now. And the way we do it now is totally different to how we did it back then. It's so much better. We've now got motorised craft. We've got essentially for lack of a better term, a IRB like Lifesavers got, and we do things a hell of a lot better. You see some of the stuff they've done last week in Woodgill and Cairns and the flooding down there. And yeah, some other significant flooding events that have occurred in the last 10 years, mate. We've gotten so much better at it. Like we really are gone ahead leaps and bounds. The whole organisation got nominated for Higgins and Langley Swiftwater Medal as it's an international Swiftwater medal, mate, and we've had individuals recognised for it, as well as the organisation itself. Like it's so good, mate.
So for you, mate, is it very similar when you're doing a swiftwater rescue? Is it very similar to how we work, here in New South Wales, mate, where it's your call? Like if you're going in, it's up to you. Like you make that final call. Like same as if we're winching into a job. Like we work in a crew of 4, and if one of us says no, we all don't go. And is it the same sort of? Is that how it works? At the end of the day, it's your call.
Yeah, essentially, mate. So we work in a team of four, and you have your team leader. And if it's if it's not achievable, mate, yeah, you don't do it. Like the QFES or QFRS, has a mandatory. We'll risk our lives a lot in a calculated manner to save life or property that's savable. We won't risk our life at all, mate, to save life property that's unsavable, and that's a terrible call to have to make at times. But it's just reality, mate. Look, there's no point in two people suffering the consequences of a shit decision.
Mm.
We're not going to. Yeah, mate, we still got families to go home to. So
Absolutely. No, I totally get it, mate. Especially, talking to some people go, "Oh, what do you mean?" But it's well, I risk too to say it's harsh, too, Luke. It's harsh,
yeah,
but it's a call you've got to make.
yeah, 100%, mate. Yeah, it's and look, a lot of the times we will push that boundary a little bit and probably go a little bit further than what we need to. And I know I've done it and had successful outcomes, but it could have very, very easily gone the other way too. Townsville floods is a pretty good example of that. We'll talk about it later.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, mate, after that course in 2013, you become a fully qualified firefighter. And for people who don't understand how the rank structure works in Queensland Fire Rescue, can you share with us how it works and what this was for you, like becoming a fully qualified firefighter?
Yeah, mate. So to be a professional firefighter, you do a 16-week recruit course down in Brisbane or in Townsville. We run the course in Townsville now as well. And then once you finish that, you come onto shift and you start what's called the Q-Step program, which is 3 years of ongoing study, which includes theory and practical assessments the whole way through. And you'll be given, I think it's about 6 or 7 theory assessments or books, assignments you have to do each year, ranging anything from practical firefighting, fire science, to HR, how to communicate as a team, and all that sort of stuff. And then at the end of each anniversary year, you'll do a practical assessment or a yard exam, where you'll be assessed in your practical skills of bowling hoses, running the pump, coupling hoses, tying knots, hose line aloft, ladder drills, all those sort of things. Operating the road crash rescue gear. So that's, like I say, that's at your calendar year. So it's essentially it's your apprenticeship for, through the best way to describe it, it's your apprenticeship of being a professional firefighter. And at the end of that 3 years, you are then deemed a first class firefighter, which is 3 chevrons on your epaulets. And at that point, you can remain a first class firefighter for the rest of your career. Arguably, probably one of the best jobs in the world. All care, no responsibility. Like, come to work, mate, do your 4 on, 4 off, and do that for your career, mate. Make pretty good money. Go to some cool jobs. Like, it's a superhero job, mate. Like, you had a car accident, you get someone out of a car, or you just isolate a battery or something if it's only a little tail ender, and you go home again. Like, you go back to the chairs, mate. You go back watching a movie, or go back to bed. The coppers, mate, they're bloody filling reports out for the next 3 weeks, going to court, having to give statements, doing this. Like see you later. So, mate, yeah, that's essentially your first 3 years' work. You become and then after that, you then self-nominate to go on for rank progression. So then if you want to nominate for the senior firefighter program, you do that, and again, that's about another 8 theory assessments, and then a practical assessment, which at the end of that gives you the qualification to command a 2-pump response to a structure fire and a hazmat incident. And then once you've completed that, you can then act up as a station officer running a station, or mate, sit in the truck and just be a fire mate. So again, a little bit of care. Still all care and just a little bit of responsibility. A lot of people argue that senior firefighter is the best rank, and that's probably true. And then from there, mate, you go on and do your station officer exams, which is a 2-year process of, again, more book work, a lot more practical exams, a lot more focused on. So then you're going down over 3 or 4 different training periods and learning how to manage a structure fire in a large event with 4 or 5 appliances, multiple firefighters. Think small fire, big venue. So think like a music venue, or think a football stadium with a fire in a kitchen with multiple persons reported missing, and a fire that's growing in size, and you need to use your tactics and crew placement and hose lines to overcome that. And mate, it's a great course. A lot of people reckon it's hard. I'm not going to say it wasn't easy by any means at all, but it was a great course. Learn a lot. Really probably one of the best courses I've done in any of my whole working career.
And for you, mate, as well, like, so it's crew management. It's so like, and I guess in a sense, mate, what I'm getting from that is that it's just a bigger scale now. Like it's bigger from your small structure to bigger scale, more crews, more appliances, all, ambulance, police, and you're now becoming that, that manager, that incident controller at a higher level.
Yeah, correct, mate. 100%. Yeah, liaising and dealing with other agencies, utilising building fire protection systems, so booster systems, takeoff points. You might be 100, 200 metres away from your fire appliance, so you need to bring all that equipment to you and then utilise the building fire protection systems to fight that fire, and send a truck to the booster. And it's much bigger picture. And as well as learning a bit of HR stuff and how to run the station and be really pulling that team leader role. And
all the fun, mate, the fun of other people, mate, working alongside. Now you got to, as you say, that management of the whole team, not just your little, your crew.
HR, mate, HR. It's every practical person's nightmare.
Yes, mate, and I know you're very practical, mate. So it would be your absolute nightmare. So, mate, you mentioned that you still kept your foot in the door with the army, and in 2014, you were midway through your fire rescue career, and you were, as you mentioned, you were still in the Army Reserve, but you went and did something, mate, that most people wouldn't do. You tried out for SASR selection. How did that come about?
Yeah, mate. So I'd been in the job for probably 2 or 3 years as a fire blue stage, and I had a pretty slow start to my career. Like I didn't get a lot of RCR jobs or structure fires, or it was pretty slow, mate. I was like, this is it, and I didn't have any kids running back then. I was married by this stage. Didn't have any kids, and I was like, this is it's a really good family man's job, but it's pretty boring. Like I was getting pretty disillusioned with it, and it's cool. Like it was a great job, and it still is a great job. But I just didn't have any kids. I'm like, well, and I always had that burning desire that I never gave selection a go. I feel like I had to prove something to myself, and I thought, well, I was still in the reserves. I thought, okay, I'll throw my application in and see how I go. I didn't really expect to get much past the medical after going through what I did with trying to become a pilot or a loadmaster. And sure enough, I got through the medical part of it, and they saw out a couple of knee injuries, and it went over to the RMO, Regimental Medical Officer in Perth, who signed off on it. And so yeah, mate, kicked off my training, and but then, mate, it didn't really go that far. I withdrew because I did end up having my first son, and realised that that's a great job, and it would have been cool as, mate. And like in some ways, I do still regret not following it all the way through. But I sort of looked at it and went, I'm not gonna. I've got 18 months. If I get through this first part of it, I've still got 18 months of training ahead of me, where I'm going to miss out on so much of my son's life. And and then if I'd gotten through that, mate, the life that they lead, and having mates that do that job and stuff, just knew that it wasn't what I wanted in terms of being a father. So yeah, mate, withdrew quite early in the piece, and kicked Army Reserves in the touch, and pretty much threw my hands up, threw the baby out with the bathwater, mate. And that was the end of my illustrious military career.
I think, mate, and there's a lot of people that say that with selection, I withdraw, mate. Even having the courage to go over and attempting, like, mate, it's still a success. Like, even though you didn't get all the way through, mate, it's still a success because you attempted. Most people don't even try, mate. And for you, as you say, mate, a lot of that SF world, mate, both two commandos and SASR, mate, you're right. It's a very different. It's not a watch what I say here. It is a family man's game, but it's not at the same time, if that makes sense.
Oh, mate, it takes a very special person, a very special family to be able to make that work. And I'll take my hat off to those people who do it. Like, I still got friends that are in there and doing it, mate. And I don't know how they do it, mate. Like, they are that is the epitome of resilience, mate. You know, like, it's not just down to the shooters, mate, being resilient. Like, it's their families, mate, who are even more resilient. Like, it's, yeah, mate, they're some pretty special people.
Absolutely. Oh, mate. Yeah, absolutely. And, mate, thank God they do what they do for us, mate, for us to be sitting here enjoying, the freedom, mate, that we enjoy. And as, a lot of my two commando mates and yourself, mate, freedom's not free. And,
That's right. Yeah.
There's a lot of people that have made the ultimate sacrifice for us to be sitting here tonight, enjoying having a conversation with, not bombs going off, and yeah, we're very blessed in this country, mate. And so midway through, after your selection, mate, you go and deploy to Mount Isa for a swiftwater response into the Gulf due to the tropical low. How was this deployment, and what was your main role on this deployment?
Yeah, it's a first little crack at a intra region deployment. Yeah, a bit of a low pressure system that came into the Gulf and was threatening to isolate townships of Burketown and Karumba. So we pre-deployed out to Mount Isa. So we just did a big road run, mate, from Townsville straight out to Mount Isa to get there as quick as we could and provide that capability into that northwestern region. It was a bit of a false start. We were supposed to we went out with two teams, three teams. Sorry, one was going to stay in the Isa, one was going to go up to Burketown, one was going to go to Karumba. But I think due to we got there a bit too slow, too slow to pull the trigger on going, and missed the window of getting in. They looked at setting us out there in helicopters and stuff, but we ended up just sitting around Mount Isa for about a week and just been a bit of a helicopter reaction force, I suppose, that never went anywhere, mate. But it was good. It was great, mate. There's nothing like going on deployment with the military. You're staying in hotels and having a good time every night. Let's say that.
I love it, mate. Love it. Something that I know exactly what you're talking about, mate. Exactly. I know exactly what you're talking about. And so, mate, in 2015, you get your first chance to deploy as part of is it USAR team, mate, for Cyclone Nathan to Cooktown in North Queensland, mate. Was that where you actually got your first chance to actually, do your job?
Yeah. So yeah, mate, that was the first real good opportunity. Of a big event. Cyclone Nathan came through and hit Cooktown, and we didn't know where it was going to go. At one stage, it looked like it was going to hit Townsville. They're quite hard to long-term forecast where they're going to hit these cyclones up here. So because it's going to hit somewhere between Cape Flattery and Mackay, I think it was. So we all stood up. And under the USAR task force, Urban Search and Rescue Task Force, we should probably go back and for a bit of clarification on how you get to that stage. So it sort of goes back to your level 2 courses. So I said before that Swiftwater's the underpinning skill you need for the whole lot. Then you go on and do your vertical rescue course, which is 3 weeks down in Brisbane. On the back of that, you do confined space and trench rescue. And then you go on and do urban search and rescue. So urban search and rescue is more designed towards building collapse, post-natural disaster, sort of like, I think, Christchurch, 2011, I think it was.
Yep.
Earthquakes, collapsed buildings, people, trying to find people in survivable voids and recover those people. And then it's merged as well now into a lot of post-natural disaster, post-cyclone flooding work where those USAR teams will deploy in prior to the event hitting and then be there for the rescue capability as well as providing rapid damage assessments to state government in the state operations centre of where all those where resources are needed. So when they look at sending military, rural fire service, SES, building washouts, all those sort of things, it's a Fireys USAR team. New South Wales got their own team as well that are doing inputting out data into a program which uploads straight to the Special Operations, State Operations Centre. And it's where the Premier and all that level are getting their data from to present to the media as well. So yeah, been through and done all those courses during the 13, 14, 15 period. And yes, I've been part of the USAR team. It also comes with like an on-call responsibility. We are, we share an on-call responsibility 3 months on, 3 months off with New South Wales. It sits under the International Search and Rescue Advisory Group, which forms part of AusAid. Interreg allows countries to have a certain amount of heavy teams per country, and so we've got 2 here in Australia. Queensland's team 1, New South Wales is team 2. Both the exact same qualifications, exact same ability. We share the on-call responsibility. So if something happens in the Pacific, we can shoot over and give them a bit of a hand. So yeah, mate. So then that leads into deploying as part of the USAR team to post-cyclone events. And Cyclone Nathan was our first one. So we sort of waited for a while, and then ripped up to Cooktown. We'll be pre-deployed into Cairns, Port Douglas, and Cooktown, and Innisfail, I think. Had teams in all those locations, and just waited out for the event, and she went through, and they're going through, mate, and doing RDAs and seeing the countryside and meeting new people was great. Heaps fun.
Always, mate. And good to actually put as you say, so much training into, finally put it into practice, made it, rewarding for you. Well, not rewarding, wrong word, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, mate. No, it's good. Look, getting to do your job, it's awesome.
And for you, mate, you met a lot of great, people, and a lot of connections, and some that you work with, still to this day. But I want to go forward to 2016, mate, and you sort of I'll go back. Sorry, I'll go back. You did your senior firefighters course, mate, and what was the hardest process about this course for you?
So I'm like I said before, I'm a pretty practical guy. I think I like to think that I can think on my feet a fair bit. So the practical training was really good, and I really enjoyed it. The hardest part for me, mate, was the theory stuff, like just the assignments and the bookwork you had to do. I'm not a scholar by any means of the word. Like I've gone on now and done a uni degree and stuff since then, and I don't want to say bumble my way through it, but it's not what I'm used to. I'm very practical. So anything theory based, mate, is hard for me. Doing bookwork, and a lot of it's not relevant either. Like it's it's a tick in the box you have to get because it forms part of the national code. Yeah. So that's mate. It's probably the hardest part for me is just getting my head around theory.
Mate, I think it's everyone, mate. I think most of us, mate, we're the same, that we're practical people, not theory based people. So
yeah, definitely. Yep. But I enjoyed the senior fireys, mate. It was good. I actually failed my first practical run.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, but hazmat and my structure fire, I actually failed them both. So I was pretty I was pretty dejected myself. But we had a pretty hectic day. We rocked up for the fire scenario because you do it all on shift. So if you get a fire call halfway through it, you're halfway through your scenario and you get called to a job, we just got to come back and try and pick up where you left off. And on this particular day, mate, we're at the structure fire scenario. Yeah, sure enough, halfway through we got called to a legitimate structure fire around, not too far from where we were. Came back and so that sort of put me off, and then got back to the station. Did my hazmat, got called to another structure fire, a GARS second alarm structure fire, one of the outer suburbs of Townsville, and then got called off that to go to a confirmed entrapment. Finished that one, got called out another and confirmed entrapment. It was just an unbelievable day. Normally, you might be lucky to get 1 or 2 jobs in a day, but this day we just got 2 structure fires, 2 cutouts. It was ridiculous. So I actually failed my first 2 practical exams.
Mate, they should have given you some slack, mate. Far out, because you would have been fatigued, mate, just alone in what you were doing. Just in those jobs, as you say. Usually it's a quiet day, and you attended 3 jobs in one day.
In hindsight, they did give me up. They said, "Oh, we can cut it here and do another day." I was like, "Nah, I'll do this," and come the end of the day, they said, "Oh, how do you think you went?" I was like, "Nah, I failed that."
Yeah, oh mate, at least you're honest in your own, yeah, no, that was no good. That was so, mate. And then in 2016, so you finally get your senior firefighter, and after that first attempt, and you apply for the state instructor's position within vertical rescue. And what's this role entail? And for you, were you at that point, you were loving the rescue side so much that's why you went for that job?
Yeah, correct. It's not, we don't get a lot of vertical rescue jobs, especially up north or in northern region anyway. So I wanted to keep progressing my skills within the vertical rescue environment, and the best way that I could think to do that was to get into the instructor role. One of the best ways to learn something is to teach it. So put my hand up for that. And the other thing was that we didn't have any state instructors within Northern Region to be bringing those skills back from the Brains Trust in Brisbane back up to our region. So I wanted to have an avenue to be able to improve our region's capability within vertical rescue. So that was the two big driving forces for me putting in for that. And was, mate, very fortunate. I was still quite junior in my career, especially inside rescue. So I was very fortunate to pick that position up, mate, and still working in that space now.
And for you, mate, as you mentioned that you picked up that position, but then you also in 2018 you applied and began a role as the technical rescue coordinator of the Northern Region, which you just mentioned. And that's part of the all operational training equipment procedure for Queensland's biggest region. What's the most challenging part of that job for you, mate?
So at that stage, for me, I hadn't had a lot to do with like briefing up to senior management. I'd always worked in the small team environment, and just basically being involved in that small team, not being too worried about what the executive leadership or regional leadership team and how they're trying to progress the region. So as well as, and in line with that, starting to develop that leadership role, going from being part of the crew to being in charge of the crew and running training and making that step. So that was probably the two biggest challenges. And of that, briefing up the chain of command and then trying to develop those communication skills. And I'm quite a direct sort of a person, probably bull at a gate sometimes. Having to learn how to rein that back in and communicate across all levels was quite difficult. And, a couple of big flooding events in there as well, where they're really relying upon your knowledge to guide what their decisions are on the within the region and within that rescue space.
We mentioned, mate, you just mentioned that there was a couple of flooding events there, and I want to go to late January 2019, the Townsville floods, mate. What was it like, and what did you see there? Because, mate, as you know, like I remember them, but I don't remember them at the same time. So, what did you see on the ground, mate? And was it different to any other flood that you've been to?
Yeah, it was the biggest flooding event I've ever seen in my life, and I'm not going to say it's the biggest flooding event I'll ever see in my life because you look at what's happened in the last 10, 11, 12 years, there's a significant flooding event somewhere every year. And we essentially deployed every single one of them. But Townsville was and still is the biggest flooding event that I've ever seen. And the hardest I've probably ever worked over a long period of time with very minimal rest, with limited crews on the ground. So basically, that met pretty much right over Townsville and dumped a phenomenal amount of rain, dumped over a metre of rain in a very short period of time, over 36 or 48 hours, something. We'd just come off shift when the flooding started to occur. I'd come off night shift, on last night shift. I was back on the trucks police stage, and another guy had filled the role of rescue coordinator, and I walked into his office, and said, "Like, do you want us to hang around? Like, there's this company's like, nah, just go home, get your head down, get a bit of rest. We'll have you. No doubt you'll be back in a few hours anyway." And sure enough, mate, I got home a couple of hours later. The phones rung and the pages went off, and one of the outlying suburbs in the north of Townsville had copped a heap of rain and come in the catchments, and there was reports of people stuck in houses floating down creeks, people isolated, and mate, that kicked off 2 weeks essentially of just constant rescues that culminated in, I think it was February the 4th or 7th or something. I think it was. The night the damn walls got the damn gates got fully opened, and I think that left 800 people homeless or without somewhere to live. And then the numbers post that was significantly more, mate. Like, just a massive event, massive event.
Mate, I know exactly what we had. Yeah, the last 18 months have just been floods down here, which we'll get to one later on with. Yeah, you and I'll have a good chat about that one. But mate, I know exactly what you mean with floods suck. They really are shit, and I'll say that they really are shit. And because you just, as you know yourself, mate, you're pushing shit out of homes, like literally. Mate. That's what you're doing.
And you're trying to, like the majority of the work that we do during those flood events are just evacuating people from homes who are isolated.
Yep.
And we're very limited for space in the rescue craft we have, and trying to tell them that you cannot bring your bloody kitchen sink with you.
Yep.
You're lucky. You can bring your cat, you can bring your dog, your bird, your snake, your bloody fish.
Yep.
But that's about as much as you bring in. You can bring a backpack on your back, and that's it. Like, you're asking them to leave. And mate, there was guys who were doing rescues and evacuations, literally walking past their own houses that are flooded. So not only so they're out there helping people in their community, literally walking past their house, just watching their whole livelihood getting washed away, and just getting on with the job, mate. Just absolutely getting on the job, and still laughing, still having a sense of humor about it, like. Running on fumes, like absolutely run on fumes, working their guts out. Like, it's just, the resilience some people showed was just phenomenal.
Oh, mate, give me fire any day of the week, mate. Floods are so devastating, mate, and they come up so quick, and then they take forever to bloody recede, and then literally, mate, we'd have people that say, "Oh, can you help us?" And we go, "Well, it's still raining. We can't." Where are we going to pump it to? There's nowhere for it to go. And you feel so helpless, mate. Like, you really do. You feel really helpless that you can't do anything until the water recedes. And it's just, mate, give me fires any day of the week. If I never see another flood, mate, I'll be very, very happy, which, it's, after dealing with them for the last 18 months, mate, let me. I know that sounds bad, and mate, just let me say some hot stuff for a change.
Mate. Unfortunate space that we, unfortunate space we live in. We're seeing quite a lot of flooding and big bushfires too.
Absolutely,
the days of structure fires are few and far between these days. We've done so much good work in community safety and fire alarms and smoke alarms and community education that we don't see a lot of structure fires. We don't see as many as we used to, but we see a lot of bushfires, a lot of flooding. Whether you invest into that whole global warming and stuff, where that plays into it. Like, I don't really get too involved with it, mate. Like, if it floods, it floods. If it's a fire, it's a fire. I don't really get into the science or the hype about all that, but there does seem to be a lot more.
Yeah, well, mate, there is, and I think too, and I'm in a bit of an agreement with you anyway. Like, I agree, but I think too, mate, what I've noticed too, and you've probably noticed now, is we're becoming such multi-agencies now. Like, we're getting involved in so many things now that we never used to. Like, and even for Queensland Fire and Rescue, it's gone are the days, as you say, mate, where it was just structure fires. It was, now it's swift water rescue. It's flood. It's flood work. It's bushfires. It's, the cyclones. It's all, mate. It's changed from what it used to be.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely. But that's just adapting, mate. That's just adapting your environment and not becoming old and pale and stale too.
Yeah, that's right, mate. And there's plenty of them in the job, mate. There's plenty of them. So
That's why I like doing rescue, mate. Rescue tends to attract the more motivated crew, which is the more of the cohort that I like to work with. People who are more motivated and keen to get out and train and not sit in the chairs. And don't get me wrong, mate, I don't mind sitting in the chairs and watching a movie, but not day in, day out.
no, no, and mate, you're there to do a job, mate. You're not there to just collect a paycheck. So
Yeah, exactly.
and that's right. And mate, I want to go forward to this in that same year. And at this stage, COVID had just started. Oh no, that was next year. Sorry, 2020. That same year in April. Can you talk me through the uni dorm fire and as you being first on scene?
Yeah, sure, mate. So I was acting up. I was a senior firefighter. I was almost finished my officer program, and I was acting up out at one of the outstations one night. And about midnight, we'd been responded. They dropped the bells for us to go and back up my other stations to a car fire. And before we even rolled off the apron, I'd heard the other truck put in a stop message, which means no other resources are required. And for whatever reason, there was another truck that was out on the job, and I couldn't get through on the radio. So I told the guy, I said to the drivers, just reverse back in and go back to bed, and I'll just give Firecom a call on the phone and tell them we're back. We haven't left. Anyway, so in that period of getting out of the truck, Firecom's actually taken multiple 000 calls to a structure fire at the university dorms, and they hadn't responded. They thought they dropped the bells on us. They didn't realise they dropped the bells for the car fire, not for the structure fire. So when I called them on the phone, they said, "Where are you?" I said, "Well, I'm going. Just put the doors down. We're going back to bed." They said, "No, we're trying to turn you out to a structure fire." And so anyway, so we jumped in the truck, and yeah, mate, sure enough, there was multiple 000 calls been received for a fire over multiple floors at the university dorm with over 200 people evacuating and persons reported missing, which is essentially, mate, the script of what we run to for a senior firefighter or an officer assessment. Big fire or small fire, big building, lots of people evacuating, people reported missing. So went through I was really fortunate. I had a very, very experienced crew. My driver had been in the job for 20 plus years. One of the guys in the back had been in the job for probably about the same. And the other guy next to him was a junior. So I had a really very, very fortunate to have a very experienced crew. I think I was the youngest guy on the truck, and I was the OIC. So I went through the process, just follow the process, mate. Like everyone says, old training kicks in, and so put the radio message in, called a guard, second alarm before we even got there, and just followed the procedure, mate. And got there. There was fire across 3 different floors. So what had happened is, post the floods, they dumped a whole lot of mattresses underneath this balcony, and a guy was punching a durry out in his balcony, flicked his cigarette butt, and it's leaned in amongst these mattresses, and very, very slowly has started a fire. And it was quite a large pile of mattresses, so it had jumped from the ground level up through his balcony, through his open door, set his room off on fire, spread it into the hallway, and then jumped from his balcony to the next one. So that's essentially where we're at when I first arrived. So we had a lot of people evacuating. We had 6 people that were unaccounted for. So obviously, our priority is rescue. We have the RECIO acronym, so rescue, exposures, containment, extinguishment, and overhaul. Trying to find those people is obviously our first priority. So you're tasking that off to police today. Like, right, we've got 6 people missing. This is the owner occupier. This is the manager of this complex. I need you to liaise with them, find out where they are, call their mobile phones, find out what rooms they're in, let me know what rooms they're in, so we can go start kicking in doors and and making sure they're not in there as well. But, and then concurrently trying to do my size up, figure out where the location of the fire is, figure out where building fire protection system takeoff points are, so where where your internal hydrants are, where the booster is. Dealing with people who are standing there with a garden hose, thinking they're achieving something, and then trying to, almost argue with them that they need to go. And becoming very forceful of making sure they leave, trying to stop police running into the building to try and rescue people. So yeah, mate, quite a large job to be dealing with as a senior firefighter. But I was very confident in that I had two other officers coming in other trucks. Obviously, I called a second alarm, and so for those that are listening, a second alarm is a way of calling for more resources or more fire trucks without having to say, "Oh, I need 4 fire trucks, 6 fire trucks." So you call a second or a third alarm. So I knew that I had some very experienced officers coming to back me up, and they weren't going to be far away. So yeah, mate, just step through the processes that that I was learning at the time, and deploy crews. I think we ended up with only 10 BA-18s going through that night, and we were able to overcome that fire quite quickly. And that's largely down to the guys, like just good crews, well drilled crews, going in and just doing their job well. And just good support on the scene as well. Look, we extinguished that within probably 40 minutes, and everyone was accounted for. There was no fatality. So really good sort of job to sort of cut my teeth on managing big structure fire.
So could you use that, mate, as could you RPL when you went, obviously your station, could you use that as your practical experience?
I wish I'd joke with the assessors. Sorry, mate, I might have to do that one again. The internet's cut out there a bit.
No, that's all right, mate. Yeah.
I actually had my assessment the following week for my third component of the practical assessments, and I joked with the assessor about it. I said, "Oh, mate, I've just done this. Can we sign that one off?" He's like, "Nah, sorry, mate."
Yeah, mate. That's what I thought. RPL, mate. It's recognized prior learning, mate. There's no better recognized prior learning than what you had that night, mate. So
no, that's right. No, it was a good job. That was probably one of the highlights for me in terms of structure fires.
Well, mate, I want to go forward to in that same year, and I want to go forward to July 19, probably the biggest operational shift you had, and really your onset of PTS. And when looking back, can you share with us what happened on this day?
Yeah, big day, mate. Biggest, arguably biggest day of an operational shift I've had. So we'd been doing that morning. I was back at the same station, on these outstations on the southern side of Townsville, and we'd actually gone into town station to do some road crash rescue training, or just do a cut up of a car and just do some training with the crews in there. And mate, I've come across it so many times where I'll be doing some training for a particular incident, and we'll get turned out to the exact incident. Like, I've been doing some vertical rescue training just on shift, and then bloody bells drop. Heading up the road for a vertical rescue job, and on this day, mate, we're doing some RCR road crash rescue training, and mate, sure enough, the bells dropped for a confirmed entrapment about 40 kilometres. I think it's about 40 kilometres south of Townsville. And so I got down there, mate. Had a fairly junior guy on the truck. He hadn't been in the job for about 3 months and hadn't had anything yet. Hadn't had a structure fire, hadn't had a fatality, a CPR, or anything, cut out, anything. It was a fairly straightforward job. It was 2 utes that had collided head on, and one gentleman was deceased. So when they're deceased, when they're called deceased on scene, everything slows down a fair bit. It becomes an investigation. Police have to take their photos, and so because it was in our station's response area, we let one of the Alpha trucks go, and so our truck and the rescue stayed on scene to do the body recovery when they had finished taking their photos. And it was the guy that was deceased was a fairly well-known drug trafficker in the area. And when we started cutting his car open, there was quite a lot of money in the vehicle and drugs. So then we had to wait for police then to catalogue all that and whatnot, and then finally got the all clear to cut this guy out of the car and be on our way and clean the scene up and get out of there. So fairly standard sort of a job, not too much, not too involved. It's pretty easy cut out. After that, we headed back into town, and we saw a lot of smoke coming from behind the meatworks, like a grass fire. So I said to the driver, and the same thing, this older guy who had been a job for years. So I'll pull in, mate. We'll go and have a look at it. Got a call on the radio and thought this would be the call for this fire we're looking at. But it was to assist the paramedics with a post for a guy who'd hung himself. It was just around the corner from where we were, so we lights and sirens around there with the first crew on scene. And quite met with a very obviously upset lady who was his wife. His kids were there. So went into where this gentleman was. He'd used a block and tackle chain to wrap around his neck and hung himself. But he was still warm. Like, he hadn't been hanging there for long. I said to when I arrived, like, how long's he been there for? She said, not long, like less than 10 minutes. So when I grabbed him, he was still warm, which was I was like, so we got him down. Started CPR until the ambulance got there and police. And then we did get a rhythm. We got a rhythm back after the paramedics had given him the drugs. Did manage to get a rhythm, but unfortunately, a couple of days later, they ended up turning life support off, and he passed away. So, quite an upsetting job because of the reaction of the family, of his wife there, his kids there. Pretty horrible. You can put yourself in that. You empathise with them a lot there. You professionally, you don't show it on the scene, but inside you're like, that sucks. That's really shit. Anyway, head back to station. But they can't get any worse. And things come in threes, mate. It's at the station. The area director, the on-call senior, was there. He came in to have a chat with us, make sure we're all doing all right. And bells dropped for a structure fire, confirmed structure fire around the corner. People reported missing inside. And right towards the end of our shift. So got there, mate, first arriving. And like, for anyone that's listening, that is a firefighter, you know how much pressure's on you when you're the first arriving truck at a structure fire. First crew's in, the officer's busy doing his size up and isolating power, and the pump is busy because he's just driven the truck there as safe as he can. He's trying to find board, he's trying to book crews out in BA. The crews are busy listening to the tasking that the OIC is giving them over the radio and making sure that they're going the right spot. And big day. So this junior that had never had any significant jobs in the first 3 months, and in the space of 10 hours, he's got a fatality with a cutout, a CPR, and then a structure fire person reported missing inside. And thankfully there was no one. There was no one inside that premise. Like, they were outside by the time we got there. And but mate, massive day. And looking back now, mate, that's where I started sort of getting burnt out, and that's sort of we're going to try. If we look back, it's where probably all where the post-traumatic stress started coming in, and probably didn't realise at the time, but definitely read its head up a little bit later.
And for you, mate, I'll thank you for sharing that, mate, because it's not, mate, it's not always, as you say, it's not what you've seen on the movies, like it's for real, mate. And, for you, dealing with that trauma, mate, like for you, how did you decompress that? Like, you compartmentalize it for so long, but how did you know when it was time to, put your hand up and say, hey, I'm struggling, I need a bit of help?
At the time, mate, I didn't. Like, it's, you just shrug it off, and still coming from the old school. If you don't talk about your problems, you didn't, mate. You just shrugged it off, and we came into, that was our second day shift, and we came into work the next night, and within, I think, an hour of being at station, we got responded to another QFES assist for a CPR in progress. Like, we just cracked on with it, mate, and like, this poor bloke had a not for resus order, but like the family couldn't find it, mate. So we're compressing this poor old bloke's chest, and he didn't, had not for resus, and the family's cranky, and mate, it was, you just got to get on with it, eh? And well, you don't, but you just did. You just got on with it. Then it turned into a period of 2 years. Was it 19? 12 months, 18 months of. Well, I've just got a lot of traumatic sort of jobs, like a lot of high stress, traumatic jobs, and until eventually, mate, I just knew it, mate. Like I was burnt. I remember coming home and I was just burnt. Like just one particular, one job in particular, just sitting there in the truck. Again, another fatality. Called on, deceased on scene. And just sit in the truck, just waiting for the coppers to take their photos. Just going, I don't want to do this. Like, I could not be bothered cutting another dead person out of the car. Like, I'm just done. And by no means not doing it, like internally thinking that, but still going, like, I'd never have, as a station officer by this stage, I'd never ever get my crews or my guys to do something I wouldn't do. Like, I'm in there with them, mate. I'm not the sort of leader that leads from the back, mate. I'm up there. I'm in the tools. I'm probably to my detriment sometimes. But yeah, mate, I'd never not do anything I wouldn't ask them to do. And yeah, mate, we can talk about it more now, or cover off some other stuff first if you want to. Or
Yeah, well, there's one that I want to talk to, mate. That, as you say, you mentioned that after that massive operational day, you had more road crash fatalities, and you had one guy, mate, that there's one that you worked with many years ago in the army, and he committed suicide. And how did that play on your mind, knowing him in the army? And you were starting to feel the signs of, burnt out. Was that the tipping point for you, or how did that go?
So this is in that 18-month period, mate, just seemed to get responded to quite a lot of fatalities and suicides, and it just cumulatively builds up in you, mate. It's the old bucket under the tap. Everyone's got a bucket under the tap and it's dripping, and no one knows how big that bucket is, and eventually, mate, she'll overflow. So been a number of suicides of ex-military guys, and none that I knew. Went to one guy who was very committed to what he was doing. It just so happened, mate, that we were just quick to get there and managed to get him before he was successful. Then went to a hanging one night. That was a guy I'd worked with, and mate, that was hard. That was shit. Like, didn't know him well, but still knew him. That was rough, mate. It was a single dad, and his kid was there, and mate, that was pretty rough. Like, looking back at it now, like, I've got 3 kids of my own now, and I don't know. It just it just seemed to blur, mate. That 18 months, mate, just blurred into a whole lot until eventually it became too much.
And mate, I appreciate you sharing, because this is why I started the podcast, mate, was to help people, help first responders, help veterans. And mate, because I've been there myself, I attempted suicide 9 years ago, and I've been at that point, mate, and I started this to help people to say that they're never alone, and because, mate, we lose too many to suicide every year, and 1 in 65,000 attempt suicide in Australia. Like, this is why I do this, mate, is to say to people who listen to this that there's someone is there for you. There's and it yourself, mate, and it's not weak to speak, mate. It's never weak to speak and put your hand up and say, hey, I'm actually struggling, and I'll say it to you, Luke, and you've heard it on all my other podcasts, mate. I wouldn't be here now talking to you if I didn't put my hand up 9 years ago and say I had a problem. And it gets too big for you, mate. And for you, was that the time where you went, I need some help, or were you still okay at that point?
No, I was still pushing. No, I was still cracking on, mate. I still thought I was bulletproof, and I was still going on the don't talk about your problems, just get on with life. And I was a newly promoted officer too, so I didn't want to put my hand up and you know, and go out like that. So, you know, pretty shitty sort of a mentality, but yeah, mate, it's what I knew at the time. So yeah, mate, just kept cracking on, just kept going.
Yeah, and eventually, mate, you know, that bucket did overflow, but we'll get into that a little bit later. But I want to talk to you now. In 2021, you were deployed down to help with the floods in northern New South Wales, and what was it like seeing, as you mentioned, other states run their operations, and what did you learn? And what was the most challenging part of this deployment? And someone that you worked with, mate, who has been on the podcast, Mitchie Parker. And
Yeah, mate.
what was that like working with Mitchie?
Working with Mitch was great, mate. Mitch came in at the end of that deployment. And I wish Mitch had come in at the start of that. Yeah, to put it politely, mate. And I'm still in this field, so challenging is yeah, mate, going from one state to another and being very used to the way that we do it in Queensland and going New South Wales. It was challenging. They've got a different way of doing it than there. I'm not going to say it's better or worse. I'm going to say that Queensland does it better, mate, because I'm a one-eyed Queensland supporter. But yeah, challenging, mate. They do things a lot differently down there. They got different organisations that all go to the same jobs, and their disaster framework management is different to ours. So it was challenging, mate. Trying to overcome some operational capabilities in there, utilising their framework, mate.
Yeah, it's I like how you did that, mate. That was really, really that's really good, mate. Well done. That was We'll leave it at that, mate, because both of us work for the organisation. So we'll we'll leave the we don't want to get ourselves shot in the foot. So
New South Wales, mate, has got some great technology, like some fantastic technology and resources and equipment. That's mate. That's what I can say about them. That they got some fantastic technology. So we're deployed up to northern northwest New South Wales, up to Boggabilla, as a swiftwater team down there in the flooding there in 2021. And yeah, mate, like really enjoyed. So I spent obviously going back to the start of the potty, mate. Like I spent a lot of time up in Burke in New South Wales. So we used to travel out to Boggabilla and Gundy and Wenaring and Walgett and Moree, mate, all those places as a kid, going to radios and whatnot, and buying and selling cattle and that sort of stuff. So it's pretty cool to go back there as an adult. And I've been back through there since I was a kid. So yeah, mate, it was really rewarding in terms of the work we're doing and the people we're working with, and just challenging, navigating different operational procedures.
It is, for all the trauma and everything, mate, it is rewarding, as you say. And if you can see past the politics, and that's all I'll say, it is a rewarding job. So
100%.
But mate, I want to go back because, as you say, that 18-month period was. I'm looking through what you sent through to me, and yeah, fucking hell, you saw some shit, that literally just kept, getting worse and worse and worse. And as you said, in that same year, you were really starting to notice the culminating effects of multiple traumas of your military and fire rescue jobs. And in June 2021, you responded to a fatality on the highway. A car head-on into a truck, deceased on impact. Rescue crew responded and waited till police finished photography, then cut body from vehicle and returned to the station. On return, you responded back to the same job site for a second incident. Can you talk to us about that, mate?
Yeah, mate, it's a pretty decent job. So yeah, there'd been a car that went head on into a truck, probably about 50 kilometres north of Townsville, and like you say, mate, yeah, we just we stood by on scene, waiting for the police scenes of crime and crash investigators take their photos before we're able to remove the casualty from the vehicle. And same thing, mate, that same feeling, sit in the truck. And I was even talking, by this stage I was talking to my mate about it, a real good close mate of mine that was on the truck with me that night. And the same thing, mate, saying, mate, I can't be fucked doing this. So when you get those jobs, mate, like they smell like when they've got this smell about them. You got blood mixed with oil and fuel and feces, and it's a smell that you can't forget it, mate. It's horrible. And that's what gets in, and that would, a couple of jobs overseas where we'd been to, similar sort of incidents, explosions, whatever, and the same sort of smell. So I was sort of getting, starting to flash back to that. But again, mate, just still cracking on with it. Just like, I'm not gonna do it. Look, move that casualty from the vehicle and put him in the coroner's wagon. Yeah, mate. And it's like there's one. Like, I couldn't eat a hamburger, mate. So this is like because we've been sitting on the highway for so long. Our on-call senior bought up some burgers for us from the survey, give us a feed, and we're standing at the back of the truck, mate, scoffing this burger, and I'm watching this guy walk down to do the identification, and so it's the gentleman who was deceased. His partner, like they lived just up the road from where this accident occurred. And so they were on scene, and her dad was a copper and had to walk down to identify him in the vehicle. I remember watching him. He looked at us, mate, scoffing these burgers, and I just felt, in my life, I felt so rude or out of touch as I'm standing there scoffing this burger, watching this bloke walk down and identify his girlfriend's bloody boyfriend. I felt like the biggest piece of shit. And I never ate a burger, mate, for about 18 months after that. And so anyway, I did the job and went back to the station, had a shower, jumped in bed, and then literally about 5 minutes later, the bells are dropped again. And you can when the radio operators jump on the turnout system, you can tell when it's a serious job in the tone of their voice. And they've turned us out, so it's common for the rescue truck to get responded to all road crash rescue jobs, but they also respond to our Alpha, which is a job that's well out of the area for that appliance. It's like, oh, this has got to be something. This is really strange. And so what had happened is obviously the highway's cut from that first job we're at, and the traffic's banked right up. And there'd been a guy that was in his Land Cruiser that was high on drugs and alcohol, doing approximately 160 kilometres an hour, coming in the highway, hadn't seen the last car that was pulled up in that convoy, and has gone straight into the back of that vehicle, which has pushed it off into the side of the table drain, ejected her from the vehicle. His car's then gone straight ahead, straight over top of the guy who was standing outside of his car in front of her, shunted that into a vehicle in front of them, and then he's ended up on his roof down the table drain on the right-hand side of the road. And so we had one confirmed deceased already, and CPR in progress already for the gentleman that he hit. So we burned back up the road for that. All the paramedics had gone from that first job. So the other crew that were first getting there, like they were working this guy for quite a amount of time before the ambulance got there and the helicopter arrived. So we arrived just before the helicopter did. And then as I'm walking up, like I can still see it in my mind, like walking up the highway, and bags of ice, like the drug, bags of little baggies of ice, littered all along the highway because they've come flying out of his vehicle as he's rolled it. And then so he has then stashed a heap of drugs in the bush, and they had him in handcuffs by the time we got there, and we were a little bit further away, air station. But yeah, then starting work on this other guy, and the helicopter coming in with the doctors and that, and doing chest drains and decompressions and ultrasounds on him, and the side like doing absolutely everything they could to try and save this guy. They were doing it, and it was pretty messy. And yeah, just that was all night, mate. Just all night dealing with that, with those two jobs, and then back to the station, mate, and then just going home that morning, and I can't even remember how I was pretty tired, as my dad was up at the time, and he's like, "Yeah, right." I said, "Nah, it's tired. Big night. I'm just going to bed." And And then my nan passed away a couple of days later, so I got a couple of weeks off there to go to the sunny coast and say goodbye to her and for her funeral and whatnot. So that was a good couple of weeks to decompress. But yeah, and then the mate first job back on shift, straight to another suicide off top of the building, and yeah, mate, just burnt this guy thrown himself off the top of the building, and same thing, his girlfriend and mate was there, and mate, I got out. Like I'd sort of hang around maybe a little bit longer to make sure there's nothing the ambos needed, and but I just wanted to get out of there. I was like, this isn't me. Like, and then I was like, something's not right here. And yeah, mate, that was my last shift I did for about 7 months.
And mate, I appreciate you sharing that, because when you sent that through to me, I looked at it, Luke, and I just went, like, seriously, like, Jesus Christ, like you can't get enough compressed into that period, mate, and yeah, like for you, that was mentally where you went, I've got to have some time away now. And soon after this, you were diagnosed with PTS, which I can understand why. I'm sitting across from you going, yeah, I can really understand why. Anxiety, depression, and for you, mate, was that hard to go and put your hand up and say, I actually need help?
Yeah, mate, I'm getting diagnosed with PTSD and anxiety and depression, sort of like the ham, cheese, and tomato of if I had the mental health sandwich. And yeah, mate, I did feel a bit weak there for a while, and a bit withdrawn and removed, and no one sort of really knew why I'd gone off, and I wasn't hiding it. I just wasn't really communicating with anyone. Like I was going through a process of getting appointments booked to go and see shrinks and whatnot, and start going through the processes of it. And a mate of mine called me up, like a real good mate of mine. He called me up and said, "How you going?" And I said, "No, like I'm all right, like, but I just can't be at work right now. I just can't face the thought of having to roll out the door to another bloody job." Like, and he said, "Yes, oh, you keep, is it a secret?" I said, "No, it's not a secret, mate. Like, it doesn't bother me. Like, tell, people want to know about it. But I'd rather know that my crew, can come to me knowing that I've been through it, and if they start to, they're starting to see things, they know that I've been through it, they might be come to me and be like, hey, I'm starting to feel like this, like, what do you know about that?" And sort of that was my mentality to it, like, try and lead from the front, and show it ain't weak to, bloody before, you can't keep saying that stuff as
no. Nah, and you know it too, mate. It's not weak.
It's been a period that we do. And
so you mentioned, Luke, that you got some help. You were diagnosed with PTSD, anxiety, and depression. And for you, as you said, mate, it was putting your hand up and saying, "Hey, it's not weak to speak," which it's not, mate. You and I both know that because we're both here today because of putting our hands up. And I want to talk, mate, that you did a program called the EMDR PTSG. I want to talk about that, mate. Can you share with us a little bit about that?
Yeah, mate. So initially I started doing cognitive processing therapy, which just wasn't working for me. Like, it was more about reflecting and writing down, writing down your feelings, and this wasn't me. So the counsellor I was with didn't do. I'd heard about not PTSD, EMDR, which is eye movement rapid desensitization therapy. I'd heard about it from a mate of mine who'd gone through it and raved about it. So found a psychologist that did it in Townsville. And yeah, mate, from the first session, really started unlocking some stuff and bringing it out and dealing with it, mate. And so went through that for about probably about 12 months all up, because I still did it after I'd come back to work as well. So yeah, dived into that head first, mate. Like, I wasn't going to let this beat me. Like, I was only 36 or something at the time, so I was like, I ain't letting this beat me now. Like, I still got another 20 years of doing this job. Like, I still want to keep doing it. It's like having it's like having a bloody broken leg or something, mate. Like, it's like breaking your arm or your leg playing footy. It's just an injury. Like, you break your leg, you go to the hospital, spend it up, mate. Go to ED, spend 6 weeks recovering, and get back on the footy field. It's the mental health's the same, mate. I just look at the same way with mental health, mate. It's a little bit longer. Like you go see someone for treatment, you treat it, you wait till it heals, and you get back to it. And that's really a very simplistic way of looking at it. That's what worked for me. And also found, the very simple things like getting into exercise, getting a really good exercise routine sorted out, read some really good books. Shout out Dan Pronk, Average 70 Kilo Dickhead, one of the best books I've ever read. Harry Moffat, mate, one of the best. Again, Harry Moffat's book, fantastic book, mate. Like, talks about being in the army and playing cricket. Doesn't get any better. And then the book that Dan Pronk and his brother and Tim Curtis put together, mate, The Resilience Shield, got a lot out of that as well. So, dive into a bit of reading and stuff too, and a bit of self-help. Like not just, going very adamant not to go on antidepressants as well. Like I did go on them for a little while, but there's plenty of. I did a bit of research too. There's plenty of data out there that shows, the endorphins that are released post-exercise surpass any antidepressant drug, and mate, I can attest to that 100%. Like I was only on antidepressants for maybe 2 or 3 months. Mate, just got fit, exercised, read a few books, people that have been through the same sort of thing, and mate, that was essentially my road to recovery. And mate, and then back to it, mate, back on the tools and back on the job, and I'm not going to say that it's never going to go away. Like I still drive past places, the jobs I've been, and I recall the jobs, and whether you call it a flashback or a recollection, whatever you want to call it, like I still do. Like, but I used to not be able to drive past any of those. There was a point where I couldn't drive past those scenes without thinking or having a hallucination that I was smelling those same smells, and to the point sometimes where I would, I'd emotionally break down. I have to pull the car over and compose myself before I go again. And that 6 to 8 month period of working through that, and mate, back on the tools and back doing the job again. It's it's not a PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorders. It only becomes a disorder when you let it beat you. There's a lot of people don't focus on post-traumatic growth. Okay, like you go through an event like that, and you can grow out of that. It's like failing a test. Like you fail your maths test in grade 10, you learn from that. You learn that you don't put the effort in, you don't get the result. It's no different. Like you learn to grow. You got to be better at something. You got to overcome something better. It's just a learning tool, mate.
Mate, I'm in agreement with you because, as you know, I've just written my book and it's about to be published. And mate, it's exactly the same thing that I did, mate. I started to exercise. I lost weight. I started to read. And, I started to do things and I was very similar, mate. I was on antidepressants for nearly 12 months. And then I made the conscious decision to get off them. I made that decision against my doctor's orders. I said, no, I don't want to be on, I don't want to be on these pills for the rest of my life. There has to be something naturally that I can do to, be good. And mate, exactly right. Exactly. Fitness has been a game changer for me. It's been a massive, massive game changer for me. And mate, it's, as I say to anyone out there struggling, mate, that you got to, and like yourself, mate, it's not always going to work for what worked for you might not work for them, but there's things out there that you can do that you can definitely find what works for you and implement it. And as you say, grow. Published my book, mate, and exactly what you were saying with the exercise, finding exercise. I was on antidepressants for 12 months. And then, I made the call to get off them myself from a doctor, and much to the doctor's, he said, no, want to keep you on them. And mate, I just made that decision that I found exercise. I found, things like reading and things that work for me, meditation, and just, mate, I've grown as well. And like you say, it's only when you let it and succumb to it that you let it define who you are, but you can grow, mate. Exactly right.
Yeah, mate. Like there's a lot of focus on post-traumatic stress disorder, and people just let disorder get on top of them, like, because it's easy. you want something worthwhile, mate. You got to work for it, and post traumatic growth's where it's at for me, mate. Like, I'd like to think I'm a much better person and leader and dad and partner than I probably was before, mate. And and even like fitness, like exercising, mate. It's probably one of the biggest ones. Like, even now, like I'll know if I haven't exercised for a few days, like I'll feel it. I'll be like, get off the couch, you fat piece of shit, and go for
Yep.
a swim or go lift some weights or something. Like,
Yep.
you'll feel 10 times better.
Mate, I know, and mate, you and I have been, following each other for a while now, and I've had 2 operations this year, and mate, I've only just been able to get back into fitness, and mate, I can tell you, Luke, I'll say it to you, mate, I was in the middle part of this year, mate, I was in a dark place again. I'd lost a really close friend of mine who was tragically killed, Nick Hill, in the US.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And we were really close, and I was only talking to him a couple of days before he died on the phone, and him and I had become very, very close, and I'd had my gallbladder out, and I'd had an ankle operation, mate, and I just couldn't train, and mate, my mental health just took a slide. Like, it was, and only just being able to get back to exercise now, mate, and mate, I wake up so much happier now. Like, and tomorrow morning, mate, at 7 o'clock, I'm doing an ice bath. So, I've got into ice baths, mate, and I love it. I love what it does. People call me crazy, mate, but hey, if it works, mate, it works, and what it does.
I haven't quite got the ice baths yet, but
you will, mate. You will. Trust me. I did my first one last weekend, and mate, I've now implemented this week cold showers, and tomorrow 7 a.m. second ice bath, mate. So I'll send you the photos. So mate, as you know yourself, mate, it's all mindset. That's what it is, mate. It's all mindset. You just get it done, and then, mate, it becomes a habit. Like, with your fitness, it becomes a habit.
Yeah, absolutely, mate. Yep.
And for you, mate, as you mentioned, that you as you call it, you growth, so PTS growth for you, and for you, mate, after undertaking this program, you were cleared to go back to work, and you applied for the OIC position on Thursday Island on return to work, and you were successful, and you began that role in June 2023. And mate, what's it like living on Thursday Island?
Oh, it's isolating, mate. It's a long way from anywhere. It's awesome. It's fantastic, mate. So I've been up here for coming up to 18 months now, and thoroughly enjoyed my time here. So it's a single officer position, and we've got about 10 part-time staff that make up the brigade up here called auxiliary fireys. And so my area of responsibility is essentially the Torres Strait Islands and Northern Peninsula area of Cape York. A lot of thinking outside the box, relying on, the skills you got and the team you got. We don't have a lot of resources. We've got 2 trucks, mate, and we got to rely on other agencies to get us to other islands, whether that be via boat, helicopter, aeroplane, flying to a lot of jobs. Mate, it's good. It's great thinking outside the box, but it's isolating too. Like, we're coming to the end of our time here, heading back to Townsville again next year. But mate, we had a great time up here. It's great. The culture, like, actually being immersed in the Torres Strait culture is incredible. Getting to see that firsthand. Had a great time up here, mate. Great fishing, great diving. Like, I'm out into fishing and spear fishing, and mate, it's fantastic.
So for you, mate, it's like a good posting for you, like and a good sort of reset to get you back and sort of recharge and get ready to, as you say, your 18 months is just about to come to an end, and just looking forward to getting back to Townsville.
Oh yeah, mate. Yeah, I've had a good chance to recharge up here and live on a literal postcard island, tropical island. But yeah, very much looking forward to getting back into full-time firefighting and on-shift firefighting.
No, absolutely. And mate, so looking back now and knowing what you now know and what you've been through, what advice would you give your 18-year-old self, Luke, and would he listen?
If I was giving advice to my 18-year-old self, I'd probably tell him to buy Bitcoin. and I'd probably tell him to put all the proceeds of that on the nose for Prince of Penzance and the Melbourne Cup, mate.
Nice, mate. Nice.
Nah, mate. In all seriousness, mate. Like just take every opportunity that's given to you. Don't be too worried about what other people think. Find find good mentors. Find one or two good mentors. To base yourself off and go follow your heart, mate. Follow what you think's right, and tread your own path. Don't be worried about what people think, mate.
No, it's great advice, mate. Great advice to any young person, mate. That it's your path to lead, and you'll make mistakes along the way, but as long as you can accept those mistakes, mate, and learn from them, and and grow as a person, and that's what it's all about.
Exactly, yeah, mate. Yeah, don't if you feel yourself struggling a bit, recognise that, and go and get a bit of help, or just repair yourself, look after your body, Like you only get one body, mate, and mine's starting to fall apart a bit now. I probably should have looked after a bit better and maybe drunk a little bit less and exercised a bit more, but I probably wouldn't have half the cool stories and that I'd do if I'd led a life less adventurous.
Oh, that's it, mate. Exactly. So, mate, what advice would you give to any young person who is thinking of joining, the army or the emergency services and dealing with things that normal jobs don't see?
If you're thinking about joining emergency services, don't rush into it. Get a bit of life experience behind you first. Don't you see so many young people these days join the police and they got no life experience, mate. They're going to jobs where they're telling 30-year-old, 40-year-old, 50-year-old people how to live their lives. They're going to, a domestic violence job, trying to tell people what to do and they haven't got life experience. I'm not saying that you discount what the job is they're going to, but they can't relate to it. So if you're going to come into emergency services, you really need some life experience behind you, which is why I think if you're interested in that path, that military is a really good lead into that, because you can be in the military and be quite young and be guided by people above you to get that life experience before you step into those sort of roles. And don't be afraid to study. Like, knowledge is power, mate. The old adage that the pen's mightier than the sword. Like, if you are passionate about something, learn about it. Like, go above and beyond to seek that knowledge. So you're not just going off half baked.
No, it's great advice, mate. I think, like you say, mate, young people today, they want to be the top, mate, straight away. And go and get that life experience. Exactly, mate. Exactly right. Like, like maybe look at, joining the military at 17 and then, maybe coming into the emergency services at 25 when you've got that little bit of a life experience, and that's it. Yeah, great advice. So any young listener out there that listens to this, maybe do what Luke said, and I'll back that up and attest to that, because it is you see things as a first responder, Luke, that you can't unsee, and once you've seen them, you'll never not see what you've seen. So I can absolutely agree with that, and don't be in a rush to it's not what you see on TV, that's for sure.
No, that's right. That's exactly right.
So, mate, on that, what are your plans going forward with your family and your wife?
No, mate, just sort of cruising now. Going back and then just restocking, mate. Going back to Townsville next year and just enjoying being back there and being with the kids. And I've got no aspirations, mate, to go any further up the chain at this point in time. I'm happy just sitting on the trucks, being a station officer, keep doing rescue, mate. I've still probably got another good 20, maybe 15, 20 years of rescuing me out. I'm not into HR and that stuff, so being an inspector doesn't really interest me. Like, I just like being part of the team, mate.
Yep. It's a good way to be, mate, and I know it too, mate. It's when you're part of that team, making the decisions on the ground, it's always the best place to be, mate. So
mate. Yeah.
Some people, mate, they can do, they can go that HR side, and all credit to them, mate. But I think I'm like you, mate. I'm more practical, and I like being at the coalface. So
mate.
And for you, mate, I want to ask you this couple of last points, mate, before we wrap up. And it's been absolutely, mate. We've spoken for nearly 3 hours, even with a couple of interruptions, mate. But that's okay, part of technology. But mate, your favourite military movie?
Top Gun Maverick.
Yeah, right. Okay. Yeah.
Every day of the week, mate. I've watched Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick many times. I reckon I could just write the script word for word.
Yeah, right. Yeah, okay.
Or Fury. Fury is a good one too.
Yeah.
Tank Crew, mate. Tank Crew, World War II. Fury, they nailed that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, it made that was a good, and Brad Pitt played a good part in that. So
good, mate. Such a great movie.
Yeah. Well, mate, for me it was actually Anzacs, the TV series. So
yeah,
back in Paul Hogan, mate, and back in the day, mate, I was obsessed with that, and sometimes I still put it on, mate. So all these years later, so yeah, and for you, mate, favorite fire movie?
I actually don't have one. I cannot stand movies or TV series about the fire service. It's so not the way it works, and it just pisses me off. But if you get a thing on the spot, mate, Backdraft. Backdraft's a classic.
Backdraft, Ladder 49, mate. The Only the Brave, mate. That wasn't too bad. Only the Brave wasn't too bad.
I haven't seen that one.
Oh, mate, that's where the the 19 firefighters over at the Hot Shots they perished.
I did see that.
Yeah.
It actually made me angry, that movie. I'm like, why would you be so just American firefighting tactics just annoy me. There's so much unnecessary risk. The risk ain't worth the reward.
Yeah. I mean, you know it yourself, mate. Where they went into, you're in a draw, you're in a natural draw. Of course, the fire's going to come up the draw. It's fire.
Exactly.
So I look at that one and go, yeah, okay, yep. But yeah, no, mate. Backdraft. I watched that religiously as a kid, and that was a good movie, mate, back in the day. So it's but yeah, mate. There's plenty out there, but there's some real ones that you're looking. There's one show, mate. I think it's Fire Country, and some of that, mate, is just so fake, and you just sit there and go, yeah, that wouldn't happen. That just would not happen. So
the doco that follows the engine company in New York that responds to the World Trade Center incident, that's pretty good. That's real world, and that's pretty interesting. Very sad.
Yep.
Yeah, quite enjoyed that.
Have you been over there, mate? Have you actually?
No.
Yeah, I've wanted to get over there myself. I've heard it's a very, very moving, special place, mate, and very, for all the wrong reasons. But yeah, one day, mate, I'll get over there, and hopefully you'll get over there too.
Yeah, I'd like to. Definitely on the list.
Yeah, absolutely. And mate, well, we've spoken for just on 3 hours, and I want to sum up your story, mate, with a quote. And Luke, you've served your country and your state with honour and brought pride to your family. Your story is one of true grit, determination, and overcoming adversity. And the quote is, "Fortitude is strength of the mind that enables one to endure adversity with courage. In other words, anybody who lacks it, fortitude, will hardly survive adversity." Mate, I believe this sums up your story, and it has been an absolute honour and a privilege to have you on True Blue Conversations and share your story. And I want to thank you for what you do for veterans, first responders, and many others who are struggling with mental health. And as I say, mate, it's been an absolute honour and a privilege to have you on True Blue Conversations. So, Luke Smith, thank you so much.
Oh, mate, it's no worries at all, mate. Yeah, thanks. It's been a good chat, mate. Thanks for having us on, and we're a bit humbled and that, but mate, to help someone, it'd be good.
Absolutely, mate, and that's what it's all about.
Welcome, loyal listeners of True Blue Conversations. Today's episode is proudly sponsored by Australian Warfighter Coffee, veteran owned and run, driven by a simple yet powerful motto: people over profit. Every dollar goes towards supporting veterans and first responder charity groups. Head on over to AustralianWarfighters.com and use the code TRUEBLUE for your exclusive discount. Because let's face it, any other coffee is just brown sadness water. Thank you for tuning in to this episode of True Blue Conversations with your host, Adam Bloom. See you on the front line.